The opinions expressed by tonight's guest do not represent the opinions or position of Spaced Out Radio, syndicated carriers, or anyone associated with SOR Media. Listener discretion is advised.
Oh man, there's got to be something to listen to on this dial.
This message is being broadcast by the Department of Defense of the Republic. At 2 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, multiple unidentified objects were confirmed to have entered Earth's atmosphere. It is speculated that these objects are of extraterrestrial origin. The broadcast will quiet at this time for your safety.
Welcome to Spaced Out Saturdays, as we light the void with Joe Root on Spaced Out Radio.
Told all the lies to myself while sleepwalking through it all.
You can follow Joe on Twitter at Lighting the Void, on Facebook at Lighting the Void, and you can call into tonight's show at 501-777-5631. You can also follow Joe at spacedoutradio.com.
We're sorry. Your call cannot be completed as done.
Remain seated, please. Permanecer sentados, por favor.
9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Why don't you talk into the microphone? I got a backup mic right here. Check 1, 2. Testing, testing. Yeah, they both working, and guess what? They don't like no feedback. What's up?
Now, let's fire the show up and light the void on Spaced Out Saturdays with your host, Joe Root.
Good evening and welcome to Spaced Out Saturday tonight. I am your humble host, Joe Roop, and it's good to have you with us. It's great to be here. I'm very honored to be here with you on this lovely, cold and damp and raining Saturday night on April 21st on into the 22nd. Thank you all for joining us wherever you're listening from, across the web or on our affiliate stations. Speaking of those affiliates, we got to welcome those in. So let's welcome in everyone listening on our affiliates on WQEE 99 Rock the Key down in Noonan, Georgia, home of the Walking Dead. We are live as well on the United Public Radio Network on 107.7 FM in New Orleans and over 160 countries around the world. We are also live on the United Public Radio Network as well, and I think I said that already. We're also live on spacedoutradio.com, Spreaker, and our digital home, my baby, the Fringe FM. And we rock out every night with Ron Bumblefoot Thal, formerly of Guns N' Roses, currently of Art of Anarchy. Bumblefoot is the official sound of Spaced Out Radio. You can also check us out on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio. Give our Facebook page a like, Spaced Out Radio Show, and you can follow me on Twitter at Lighting the Void as well. Subscribe to the new YouTube channel, Spaced Out Radio. We're also on iHeartRadio, and you can tune us in on TuneIn, which is also a free app. You can download and listen to Spaced Out Radio as well. Download the shows from iTunes or any podcast player, and of course, the website is spacedoutradio.com. Now, and if you go to patreon.com for as low as $1 a month, you can become a patron of Spaced Out Radio. Now, I'm excited tonight. We're going to be talking to Stanton Friedman. I've always wanted to talk to him. I got to talk to him a little bit at a conference, but never this kind of intimate conversation, so I'm ready for this. Now, remember, if you want to take part in the show, sign into one of our chat rooms on Spreaker, on the UPRN chat room, or on Facebook at the SOR Space Travelers Club. Or if you're on Twitter, just use the hashtag SpacedOutRadio, and I'll get to your questions in there as well. If we open up the phone lines, the number is 777-5631. Also, if you head over to the website for just $5 a month, you can become an SOR Space Traveler. And as of right now, you can go to the Spaced Out Radio store and grab a t-shirt, a sticker, or a poster. We also have the Encounter online that deals with everything paranormal, and you can check out the latest blog post there as well. And if you've had one of those experiences you don't want to tell your friends about, but you really want to talk about it and you can't explain it, fill out an SOR Sightlines report. And last but not least, Tim Doyle from UFO Seekers and Leslie Mitchell Clark's Contact TV also has some great video viewing there as well. Tonight we're going to be speaking with Stanton Friedman. Now, just in case you've lived under a rock in ufology for the past, I don't know, 50 years at least, if you don't know who Stanton Friedman is, let me tell you. Stanton is a nuclear physicist, author, lecturer, who received his bachelor's and master's degree in physics from the University of Chicago in 1955 and 56. He was employed for 14 years as a nuclear physicist by such companies as GE, GM, Westinghouse Astronuclear Laboratory, TRW Systems, Aerojet General Nucleonics, and McDonnell-Douglas Astronautics, working in such highly advanced, classified, eventually canceled programs as nuclear aircraft, fission and fusion rockets, and various compact nuclear power plants for space and terrestrial applications. He became interested in UFOs in 1958, and since 1967, he's lectured about them at more than 600 colleges and 100 professional groups in all 50 U.S. states, all 10 Canadian provinces, and 19 other countries, in addition to various nuclear consulting efforts. He has only had 11 hecklers, of which 2 were drunk, and he has published more than 90 UFO papers and has appeared on hundreds of radio and TV programs, including Larry King in 1997, 2007, and twice in 2008, and many documentaries. He is the original civilian investigator of the Roswell incident and co-authored Crash at Corona, the defensive study of the Roswell incident. Top Secret Magic is his controversial book about the Majestic 12 group, established in 1947 to deal with alien technology, which was published in 1996 and went through 6 printings, and an expanded new edition was published in 2005. Stanton was presented with a Lifetime UFO Achievement Award in Leeds, England in 2002 by UFO Magazine of the UK. He is co-author with Kathleen Marden, Betty Hill's niece, of a book in 2007, Captured, the Betty and Barney Hill UFO Experience. The city of Fredericton, New Brunswick, Canada, declared August 27, 2007 Stanton Friedman Day. Wow, that's pretty cool. His book, Flying Saucers and Science, was published in June 2008 and is in its 4th printing. His newer book, Science Was Wrong, Startling Truths About Cures, Theories, and Inventions They Declared Impossible, with Kathleen Marden, was published in June of 2010. On July 2nd, 2010, he was inducted into the Roswell, New Mexico UF Hall of Fame for his long-term investigative efforts on that important case. Now, his latest book, also with Kathleen Marden, was Fact, Fiction, and Flying Saucers, and that was published just late here in September 2016. Both Top Secret, Magic, and Captured, the Betty and Barney Hill UFO Experience, have been optioned for movies by Stellar Productions of Hollywood. Now, he has provided written testimony to congressional hearings. He's also appeared twice at the UN, I'm assuming that's United Nations, and been a pioneer in many aspects of ufology, including Roswell, Majestic 12, the Betty Hill Marjorie Fish star map work, analysis of the Delphos, Kansas physical trace case, crashed saucers, flying saucer technology, and he also, which is kind of cool, I think, challenges to the SETI group, and he calls it the silly effort to investigate cultists. He has spoken at more MUFON symposiums than anyone else. Stanton, I've always wanted to talk to you, man. I really appreciate you coming out to Spaced Out Saturday. Thank you for joining us.
It's my pleasure. I grew up with radio. I'm old enough to remember when there wasn't television, I like radio.
I love radio myself. And speaking of that, there's been this crazy shift that's happened over this past weekend. We lost one of the best in radio, probably the best, in my opinion, in this field, Mr. Art Bell. And, I know that you had spoken to him quite a few times. And,
Yes.
What was your opinion about Art Bell?
I thought he stood out. His questions were sharp. He paid attention. He knew what he was talking about. You could count on him for an interesting show and no nonsense. Some guys don't do their homework. Art did his. ask good questions. And, you know, he wasn't that old. I think about 10 years older than he was when he died. We lost another fine radio host, Chuck Harder, for the people this past week. And I did his show several times. They were quite different, but they knew each other and liked each other. You know, it's a challenge to do a show often. You know, there are a lot of people out there. Some of them are not so nice. Most of them are very nice. I enjoy doing radio, but Art was something special. And, you know, we certainly will miss the likes of Art Bell. He had what it takes to do a fine job, and he did a fine job. And, you know, I'm sorry to see him go.
Well, another thing I could say that you guys had in common was every radio host that I've ever talked to wants to know how Art Bell was good as he was. And I think a big part of it was that, you know, he pioneered the subject field on radio. And I think you can relate to that as far as investigative research goes. I mean, you have been researching since before Art Bell was even on the air.
Well, yeah, I think before anybody. No, not really. But, I read my first book in 1958, and I was, you know, it surprised me. It was the report on unidentified flying objects by Air Force Captain Edward Ruppelt. And I didn't realize this information was out there. I mean, I read science fiction stuff when I was a kid. But then I went on to work my way through college and keep busy. And, you know, funny how the world goes. My dad worked for the same company for 37 years, and I figured I would too. I started off with General Electric, the big company, 3 different nuclear divisions. What the heck? That was in 1956. And we were working on nuclear airplanes, and people look at me, what? Nuclear airplanes? What are you talking about? The Aircraft Nuclear Propulsion Department of General Electric, just outside Cincinnati, Evendale, Ohio. In 1958, our budget was $100 million. That was a lot of money in 1958. For most of us, it's a lot of money now.
Yeah, but that's what I was fixing to say. It's quite a lot of money now. So, but absolutely, I'm sure
we employed 3,400 people. 1,100 of them were engineers and scientists. We're not talking about 6 professors sitting around with 12 grad students. It was. I loved the part. I thought I'd spend the rest of my life with GE. I could retire when I was 57. You know, age and years of service meet the magic number. 3 years later, I was gone. I saw the handwriting on the wall. Saw the program going downhill and got a job someplace else. And 16 months after I left, the program was closed. And, you know, what's crazy, this was all Cold War impetus, really. If you could write a good proposal, Uncle Sam would fund you, you know, because we got to beat the Russians kind of thing. And I was seduced by the excitement of working on a big program, exciting experiments. You know, getting a nuclear-powered airplane would be a real special thing. And we operated jet engines on nuclear power. Never flew. We flew a reactor in an airplane and operated it, but it wasn't powering the plane. But it was excitement. And, you know, I went on to work at exciting jobs that got canceled. And the most disappointing... the most satisfying and the most disappointing at the same time. I worked on a nuclear-powered propulsion system, a nuclear reactor for space propulsion when I worked for Westinghouse Astronuclear Lab in Pittsburgh.
That's amazing.
And
I can't believe that we're not using that right now. You know,
well,
they're talking about space travel now.
We were very successful. We were a little surprised, but the program, that reactor, that rocket propulsion system, was less than 8 feet in diameter, operated at a power level of 1,100 megawatts. Now, Hoover Dam produces 2,000 megawatts, and is a heck of a lot bigger than that. And the exhaust temperature was 4,000 degrees. Liquid hydrogen in very cold and out very hot. And Aerojet General also built one same year, 69 or so. And theirs was at 1,000 megawatts in Los Alamos National Laboratory in New Mexico. Their Phoebus 2B operated at 4,000 megawatts. And then all three programs were canceled. I mean, it was one of those, what? Why did we do all this? If you're going to cancel a program instead of use them, you could double or triple your payload to Mars with an atomic rocket.
Well, I've never been impressed about the financial moves of the government. Never. They've never impressed me.
Me neither. Me neither. It was crazy. And, you know, I got the shock of my life. We were all successful, and they canceled the program. And so I managed to get another job. I mean, I got a family to feed and all that stuff. And I'm driving across the country to take a job with McDonnell-Douglas Astronautics in Santa Monica, California, from Pittsburgh. And I'm going across the country when I hear on the radio that the program had been canceled. I mean, the program I was going to work on. My job would be to figure out how flying saucers worked. Who could ask for anything more, you know? And I report for work, and I say, you realize we just laid off 3,000,
Well, when you say you were seduced, though, Stanton, what seduced you more? The saucer work or the money?
Frankly, the saucer work. What could be more exciting than working on a program to high performance in the atmosphere and then go to the stars? I mean, man, you know, and there have been several changes that have happened, all in the right direction as far as I'm concerned. People have had the notion that they're only, Frank Drake in 1960, pushing the SETI program, was talking about there being 6,000 places in the galaxy, the Milky Way galaxy, that could be sending signals our way. He didn't say why they would do that. But now, thanks to the wonderful Kepler satellite, which I am very impressed with, which spots planets all over the place, it turns out it comes as a great shock to a lot of people that there are between 1 and 1.6 is a better number, planets per star. And just to see what that means, within a mere 100 light years, which is just down the street, galaxies over 1,000 light years across, after all, within 100 light years, there are 10,000 stars. Big ones, small ones, old ones, new ones, fat ones, skinny ones, if you will. And there appear to be, therefore, 16,000 planets within a mere 100 light years.
Well, I'm no mathematician, but I would say...
If I said that 50 years ago, people would say, you're crazy, man.
Right. But, I mean, I would say using probability, that would let us know that there has to be other planets that are like ours, with life. And it's probably streaming with life out there. I would like to think that it is.
Well, remember, the study people never talk about colonization and migration, but I don't know about you, but my family 500 years ago were not living in Canada or the United States. Colonization and migration are big deals. And so to have all those places out there, and also, as late as 1650, Bishop Ussher went through the Bible and all the begatting that's talked about, and decided that the world was created in 4004 BC. So we're talking 6,000 years ago, roughly. And now we know that the Earth is at least 4 billion years old. And the universe, some people say there are many universes, but I'm not going to get into that. That's not my area of concern. The universe is at least 13 billion years old. That leaves plenty of time. I mean, you realize the first long-distance radio message here on Earth was in 1900. And in 1920, we thought the Earth was a mass of burning gas. How else could you produce energy? Well, in 1938, some smart physicists figured out that not only fission, but nuclear fusion. And fusion is what powers the stars. And I'm not saying there isn't something better, but you can get an idea of the difference it makes if you go nuclear. You start with World War II, and I remember World War II. A big bomb was a 10-ton blockbuster, 10 tons of dynamite that blowing up. That's how much energy one bomb could carry. Wow. It took a big airplane, a B-29, to carry it. Now, 1945, first nuclear explosion, if you will, released the energy of over 15,000 tons of dynamite. But we were just getting started. In 1952, we tested our first hydrogen bomb, a fusion device, released the energy of 10 million tons of dynamite. And the Russians in the early 60s tested Tsar Bomba, released the energy of 50 million tons of dynamite. One stinking bomb.
That's incredible.
And the thing is, you can use fusion, which produces the energy of all the stars, for propulsion. I worked on a study of fusion propulsion, Air Force sponsored, in 1962. $9 million they gave us at Aerojet General Nucleonics. And the conclusion of this exciting program was, if you got the dough, you can go. And we haven't gone because we don't want to spend the money, whatever it is. But we're already at that point. So clearly others could have gotten there before us.
But is fusion propulsion still considered this day, though? And I want to talk about that because I know you've announced your retirement. Is fusion propulsion still to this day considered theoretical? Well,
we haven't built one. You can't hitch a ride to the stars yet, but it's not just theoretical. Fusion is real, not just in H-bonds. And, there's a related thing here. That is, we Earthlings, nice guys that we are, have exploded 2,000 nuclear weapons. People look at me, what do you mean 2,000? Well, sure, some of them were underground. But still, I feel that anybody that has a civilization out there is going to be concerned about anybody who tests a nuclear bomb because they can use it to bother them. In other words, we'd like to think we're off here in the boonies and nobody can bother us and we're king of the hill, so to speak. Nonsense. I'm not saying there isn't anything better, because my mantra is that technological progress comes from doing things differently in an unpredictable way. The future is not an extrapolation of the past. Today's little pocket calculators are not just better slide rules that I was using when I started work in industry.
Right.
And people listening who don't know about slide rules, don't worry about it. Nobody's using them now. But handy little device you could put in your pocket, your shirt pocket, showing you were a scientist, of course, pocket protector, to multiply and divide and do square roots and things like that.
Well, I've never used one. I've seen them, but I've never used one.
Well, I used one, and all engineers and scientists were
Sure.
using them when I started work. So it illustrates the situation that today's calculators are not just small slide rules. They're altogether progress. They're different. They're better.
But for such an intelligent man, I think you're quite the character, because you've always told everybody that, I'm researching flying saucers, not UFOs. Flying saucers is a whole different ballgame, and that's kind of interesting that you say that.
Let me explain. I'm interested in intelligently controlled extraterrestrial spacecraft, of which many have been observed and landed and abducted people and so forth and so on. All flying saucers are UFOs. Not all UFOs are flying saucers. So I'm, 11 hecklers, that's no big deal. You get that many if you talk about sports, religion, politics. If you can't handle the heat, get out of the kitchen, somebody once said.
Right. Well, speaking of getting out of the
Harry
kitchen,
Truman, I think. But
you're announcing your retirement after, like I said, there's a lot of things that are about this area of time right now. Things are changing, especially in this field and study. And, I don't want to sound dumb, but I do want to know what does that mean? Are you not going to write anymore? Are you not going to lecture anymore? Are you going to stop doing radio shows?
I probably will continue doing some things like radio shows. I grew up with radio, and I can do it sitting here in my bathrobe and pajamas. It's easy. But I'm getting old, and I've lost, as we used to say about baseball, lost a couple steps on the way to second base when you get older,
Yeah.
And it's time. I want some time for myself, and my wife would appreciate that, too. How long? 84? How many people, are still working at 84? Not many. So what I'm trying to do is to avoid, I think my longest trip was 15 lectures in 25 days in a dozen states. That's hectic. It's work. And, I just as soon not be doing all that. I enjoy speaking. I just got back from a conference in Eureka Springs, Arkansas. Mm-hmm. And small town, but we had, I'm told, 600 people at the conference.
Right, that's where I first met you. I was at the Fringe FM booth down in the vendor area in the back corner in 2017. Yeah. I think, wasn't that your first year there? Or was
I'd been there 2 years before that.
Oh, okay. But, gotcha.
It's all right. And they did a darn fine job organizing the conference, I thought, and it went smoothly and so forth. So, anybody who says nobody's interested in flying saucers has misread the marketplace, so to speak. And, yeah, my name is on 6 books, but still, I've been out there. Be a ufologist, see the world, and that's ufologist, not ufologist. Some people want to put that extra O in there. Sorry.
Just one O, right? I hope I spelled it right. You make me insecure about my intelligence, Stanton. No, I'm just playing. But
don't worry about it.
Right? No, I'm just playing. But the one thing that I think about nuclear propulsion systems, I might actually agree with some people about it. Isn't it dangerous? Don't they worry about plasma leaks? And I know you tested it out in the desert, right?
I would have to say that, yes, of course it's dangerous. Driving a car is dangerous. More than 30,000 people got killed in the United States last year in automobiles, and loads of them got injured. So, but let's look at the other side of the coin. The Navy has nuclear submarines that can go around the world underwater. We have nuclear-powered aircraft carriers that, believe it or not, and people look at me like I'm nuts when I say it, can operate for 18 years without refueling. One of my great heroes is Admiral Hyman Rickover, who was responsible for the nuclear Navy. And he didn't want to lose any Navy guys. I can understand. In other words, you got to be careful. All right, it's a price you pay. I wear seatbelts when I ride around in a car. I remember when people say, "What are you wearing a seatbelt for?" I insisted that my kids wear seatbelts. You think I'm bad drivers, Dad? We're bad drivers? No, but there are plenty of bad drivers out there.
Well, yeah. Speaking of bad drivers, I would like to think, there's been some crashes. You investigated quite a few. To me, it is aliens are far more intelligent than us, I would like to think. So how do they end up crashing their ships? Are we shooting them down?
They had
what's going on?
Something surprising happen. Maybe a mid-air collision. Maybe, I think one of the things that happened is they probably ran into a radar beam that they didn't know was there. And they discombobulated the propulsion system or the guidance system, and, whoops, there we go. I was going to say they're human. The pilots are. They make mistakes. They're not human. They're alien, but still, same difference. We don't live in a perfect world. There are all kinds of things that are not really predictable, controllable. We drive cars, even though we know people will be killed this year. And, as a personal example, I have, I shouldn't admit this, I guess, but flipped a couple of cars and walked away.
You did? Really?
Yeah, thank God. Not at the same time.
That's a scary, I've had that same thing happen. That is a very, very scary thing. But, I mean, a man...
I didn't say it was fun,
yeah.
but
yeah.
I walked away. One of them, I was on my way to New Mexico, and I was down in Maine. I had too big a lunch and fell asleep at the wheel, I guess, on a highway at 4 p.m. And, it's kind of funny to wake up hanging by your seatbelt upside down. It doesn't seem funny when you think about it, but somebody driving behind me saw it happen, came over, are you okay? And I said, well, I don't know, let me check. Yeah, I got all my limbs and stuff. And they drove me to the hotel, and I caught a couple airplanes the next day and drove 200 miles from Albuquerque to Roswell. And, okay, I'm not happy. I rolled the car. When I called my wife, I said, I got good news and bad news. The good news is I'm alive. The bad news is the car is dead.
Right.
Okay.
Well, I'm glad you're okay. I think we all are. Because
me too. And
you've done
it
a
was
lot.
an uncomfortable ride in the ambulance. In my second time flipping over, flat on your back in an ambulance, 10 miles to the
That's nothing
hospital.
worse riding in as an ambulance. Those things beat you to death. I've rode in a couple of myself, but that's just because I used to have real bad anxiety attacks. Now, I wanted to speak about your retirement a little bit. A lot of people are talking about this, but where do you see the future of ufology going now? I mean, are we headed in the right direction, or are there just some things that we still need to be working on heavily?
Well, we need to get our attitudes about ourself and our place in the universe turned around a little, I think. I can't believe any aliens would want to treat us as equals. Primitive society, major activity, tribal warfare. I mean, look at World War II. We nice guy Earthlings, killed 50 million people. We destroyed 1,700 cities. You'd think we'd learn how to live with each other, for goodness sakes. So I'm not proud of that record. As an Earthling, I'm ashamed of it.
Right.
And I think the aliens, I appreciate their forbearance and not saying, let's wipe them off the map. Who needs those guys? Especially when they have nuclear weapons, et cetera, et cetera. And anybody who looks, Robert Hastings has written a book about nukes and UFOs. Plenty of sightings near nuclear installations at Malmstrom Air Force Base in Montana. 10 nuclear-tipped missiles went offline after a UFO showed up at the gate. Flying saucer, I better say, I guess. 10. Now, supposedly that's impossible. It can't happen. And in the Soviet Union, they had nuclear-tipped missiles go online. And fortunately, they got it stopped. But that's even scarier, you know.
Well, those things that happened when they had the fake alarms in Hawaii, and then another one in a few weeks, happened on the coast of Japan. They all said it was just, misclicks on a mouse or something. I'm not so sure about that. I've never believed that.
No, and the thing is that anything you want in terms of, well, why don't they land? Well, they do land. Why don't they meet with people? Well, they do abduct specimens, and they seem to treat them decently. They don't serve them a fancy meal. But, I think we got a bunch of graduate students doing their thesis research on a primitive society, because they treat us basically as specimens. but they don't treat us as mice, and they don't wipe us out and stuff like that. So the thing is, I think we live in a galactic neighborhood.
Really?
That's sure. I think there are loads of beings around, and that they out there. One of the things that makes me optimistic is that I think they've learned how to live at peace with each other. They haven't destroyed each other, obviously, and they've had a long time to do it. So I'm pleased about that. That makes me optimistic. I mean, maybe Earth is a penal colony. They dumped all the bad boys and girls here, and that's why we're so nasty to each other. You'd think any large group of people would learn after a while, a few wars hither and yon and so forth, to be at peace with each other. And that we're not. Maybe the reason we haven't had a major nuclear holocaust is that we've learned our lesson. I don't know. But certainly I think people need to understand that we're not the big shots on the block. And I've got a great-grandson, 11 years old, and I wonder what the world's going to be like when he grows up.
I do question that about my son, too. I'm a little worried, to be honest with you.
Well, so am I. I mean, all those nuclear weapons out there, and this guy in Korea and so forth, in North Korea, I don't trust that we're going to behave sensibly. And so it worries me. Gee whiz, we're spending $1 trillion, we Earthlings, and I'm presuming you're an Earthling, or an Earthling. You haven't shown me proof of that, but I presume that's the case.
I'd like to think I am.
Well, I hope so, and I hope you care about the planet. And, $1 trillion this year on military things, there are plenty of starving people that could use a little food, and I can imagine visitors here shaking their heads at, can't these guys grow up? They got a beautiful planet, and it's a funny analogy here. The Earth, many people don't realize the Earth is the densest planet in the solar system. People think a planet is a planet is a planet. No, it's not true. A cubic foot of Earth weighs more than a cubic foot of any of the other planets, whether you say they're 8 or 9. I mean, I'm not going to argue about that. Is Pluto a planet or not? Or what difference does it make? But we've got all kinds of stuff here, and maybe that's why some of them are coming here. That means there are more heavy, dense metals here than in the other planets. Things like uranium and iridium and osmium that most people have never heard of, but has special properties. Gold, lead, people say heavy as lead. 11, to give you a little lesson in physics, lead weighs 11.3 grams per cubic centimeter. Uranium is around 18.9. Osmium is over 21. You got a cubic foot of osmium, boy, you got a bundle of money. But what I'm saying is that who knows why anybody's coming here. They could easily tell that we're dense. And I don't mean the people, but I think that's true, too, in how we behave. How do you get elected? Well, you threaten to beat the heck out of the other guy.
Yeah, now times are very scary, especially with this launch that just happened in Syria. Another thing that that bothers me a lot is in this field, I love to talk about people's experiences and their stories and their witnesses and what they've experienced in their life, whether it's spiritually or, whether it's with aliens or UFOs. But I think what we're lacking and what I'd like to see happen in the future is I'd like to bring back hard science. I get so much grief from people for that because I like proof. I want to see it, touch it, smell it, feel it. I want to experience it,
Evidence should be the basis for any conclusion about anything. Evidence, not belief systems, Don't do your research by proclamation. Do it by investigation, is my feeling. And the funny thing is, there is so much evidence out there. I tell people, well, in many of my lectures, I talk about 5 large-scale scientific studies. Show a slide, what the cover of the report looks like and so forth. And after each one, I will ask, how many people here have read this? I'm lucky if I get 2 or 3% have read any. And it's convincing to them that maybe they haven't done their homework. They thought they had. And, I was at University of Manitoba in Winnipeg, Manitoba. We had a big crowd, and a crowded auditorium. People were sitting in the aisle. And at the end, the first guy in the question and answer period said, how about polling this audience? I had presented some Gallup poll data showing that the greater the education, the more likely to believe in flying saucers and so forth. And I said, well, I don't usually ask my audience to stick their necks out. That's my job. So I don't think anybody mind. Everybody clapped. So, okay. I said, I'll ask 2 questions. How many think some UFOs are intelligently controlled extraterrestrial spacecraft? And how many think no UFOs are intelligently controlled extraterrestrial spacecraft? More than 90% thought some were. The question isn't, of course, are all UFOs alien spacecraft? Are all isotopes fissionable? No, but for us nuclear guys, it's good that some are. Are all people over 7 feet tall? Well, ask the basketball coach. Not many, but give me one, he wants, And so we've learned to look at the particular, not to generalize. Find the guy who can run the 4-minute mile for your track team. People still running 4-minute miles? I don't know.
Oh, yeah, definitely. They're getting, actually, the last study I looked at when it came to speed, we're actually getting faster when it comes to especially the Olympics. Every time, and it's weird because Rupert Sheldrake talks about this, every time we break a record that seems impossible, the rest of the competition kind of adapts and speeds up to it. So everything that has been impossible with the human has become more possible over time.
Well, I believe that for sure. And one of my books with Kathleen Martin is Science Was Wrong. And there are 14 chapters, each one stimulated by some very smart person saying something very stupid. Like the top astronomer in the United States, Dr. Simon Newcomb, stated that if there was one thing he was sure of, men would never fly any distance in a vehicle. This was 2 months before the Wright brothers' first flight. In 1956, the English astronomer, Royal, no less, Dr. Woolley, said something. He was asked by Time magazine, what did he think about space travel? He said, space travel is utter bilge. Who would pay for it? What's the point of it? What we need is better tools for astronomy. Well, Sputnik went up in 57, and the space age followed. You got to have vision. And sure, not all visions will be accurate. That's life. That's why, a good baseball player gets a hit a third of the time. We don't insist he get a hit every time he goes to bat. That's irrational for the circumstances. So I'm excited about space, and I am not volunteering to go up because I'm too old, and I couldn't handle it. I'm not trained and all the rest of that. But,
I know Trump has rehashed a lot of this. I forget the name of it, but I think it was called the National Space Council that, H.W. Bush was the leader of, which that guy scares me altogether. And then they disbanded it, and I think it was 99. Then he reopened it, and now they're moving their focus towards interplanetary space travel, and he's talking about troops in space, which is exciting to me. What bothers me about it is after looking at research, especially yours, what they cover up. So the more they reveal, it seems to me that the more that's actually there. It always seems to me when they reveal something, it's already been happening for a long time.
Well, I think that's pretty good. The National Security Agency, NSA, never says anything, big intelligence outfit. we used freedom of information to go after them to reveal their UFO stuff, and it took a long time and cost some money, but still, they admitted they had 156 top secret Umbra pages about UFOs. And we pushed to get it released, and they finally released it. You could read one sentence per page. Everything else was whited out. And if you were to ask, well, I'd like a set of those today, they'd say, sorry, we have been unable to find the originals on that. That's bookkeeping, huh? It's crazy. They're willing to lie, and I don't say that lightly. I mean, I'm working under security. I learned to sort of tiptoe around the truth on occasions, but in the biggest study ever done for the United States Air Force, Project Blue Book, Special Report number 14. And Blue Book was the Air Force group concerned with UFOs from 1952 to about 1969. In the biggest study, they released a press release. They didn't release, the report was generally unavailable. And I stumbled across this, it really was an impetus for me, at the University of California, Berkeley Library. I'd read 10 books already about UFOs, and none of them had mentioned this. Largest study ever done, 3,201 sightings. That's a lot. It was done for the Air Force. Hundreds of charts, tables, graphs, maps. In the press release, he said, on the basis of this study, we believe that no objects such as those properly described as flying saucers have overflown the United States. Even the unknown 3% could have been identified as conventional phenomena or illusions if more complete observational data had been available. Unknown 3%. The fact is, if you look at the report, and I was shocked because I had the report and I'm a data hound, and the unknowns weren't 3%. They were 21.5%.
That's a
now you cannot
massive difference.
Well, yeah, I mean, you can't say that's 3 rounded off. You know?
Right, it's a massive difference.
Yeah, and people are shocked when I point that out. They did a quality evaluation of all the sightings. The better the quality, the more likely to be unidentified. The probability that the unknowns were just misknowns was less than 1%. They did a statistical cross-comparison. That means they weren't the same, darn it.
Well, it's that brings another point up, too. The cover-ups is something I really admired you going after, just talking about up front in lectures, radio shows. It was nothing ever bothered you about bringing that up. And today I'm a little bit worried and concerned because now we have the government, or I would say Louis Elizondo, and Louis in the chat room brings up a good point, about the metamaterial that's allegedly stored by the Pentagon that's not from this earth. What do you think about all that? Do you think it's real or it's just a distraction?
It's kind of strange. I was shocked with the big article in the New York Times, which mentioned Elizondo and so forth. I was impressed with him. I watched him on the television broadcast and in an interview, and very sharp. And there were several other people who had fancy positions with the government, assistant secretary of this or that. And they admitted that there had been this program that lasted, 7 years, I think, that spent $20-some million that I'd never heard of. Certainly they were successful at keeping it. But I've been waiting for the other shoe to drop. Where's the rest of where's the data from these studies? They admit it's there. There was this big program. And that isn't a lot of money, but they said it was... Many people think the program has continued since then. And in my book, Top Secret Magic, when you quote Blue Book Special Report 14, you should also quote the memo from General Carol Bolender, Air Force General. In 1969, after the University of Colorado study, the so-called Condon Report recommended that Project Blue Book be closed. General Bollinger, an engineer on the lunar excursion module, which, as you may recall, was very important that it not fail when we landed on the moon, because we were losing the battle to the Russians in terms of who's the big guy on the block, you know. And General Bollinger, we didn't see his memo until 10 years later, when a guy who'd been filing hundreds of Freedom of Information Act requests, this item turned up. He said that reports of UFOs which could affect national security are made in accordance with JNAP, Joint Army Navy Air Force Publication 146, or Air Force Manual 55-11, and are not part of the Blue Book system. What? How could they not be? We've been told since 1952 the Blue Book was it on UFOs. And he went on to say, if we cancel Project Blue Book, the public won't have a place to report UFO sightings. However, as previously noted, reports which could affect national security will continue to be investigated using the procedures designed for that purpose. Holy cow, what are they saying? Well, I managed to locate General Bollinger. He's gone now. You can't have him on your show unless you can reach the other side. Maybe you can. I don't know.
Oh, I cannot, sir.
I found General Bollinger, and I told him, I gave him my background. I'd worked under security for 14 years and so forth, and I'd read his memo, and I was very impressed. I said, it sounds to me like you're saying that there are two separate communication channels. One for sightings that could affect national security, and I mentioned that I'd had somebody tell me 3 weeks earlier that he was at an Air Force base in the military when a saucer went down the runway at a base where nuclear weapons were stored. And I said, that has to be a concern for national security, and he agreed with me. And I said, on the other hand, if my wife and I are out driving and see a flying saucer, big deal, we'll see them all over the place. He agreed, two separate communication channels. And the question, of course, is, okay, if the sightings that could affect national security didn't go to Project Blue Book, where the heck did they go?
Well, they went to the dark cabal, right? Or some deep intelligence that we don't know about. Or maybe it was the Majestic 12. I think it could be still.
My conclusion is Majestic 12.
Right.
My book, about that goes into that, and I think I deal with all the objections. There are a whole bunch of phony documents. There are 3 genuine ones. They're the ones that matter. It's like the 7-footer to the basketball coach. Don't tell them that, you got a 5'6" guy. Some of those are pretty sharp too. But I think Majestic 12 becomes the logical answer. And you set up one organization. You don't need the Army, Navy, Air Force to have separate groups. You want one central group concerned with. After all, we would like to figure out how these darn things work, wouldn't they? Wouldn't they make wonderful weapons delivery and defense systems? Certainly we're not going to tell the Russians what we learned. We pick up the wreckage of a crashed saucer. Hey, guys, look what we found. That's not how the world is working.
Well, I think it stands to say true, though, and I can tell you from experience, especially where I live, another problem is this, the mass panic and psychology of the people. I really don't believe we're ready. Down here, if an alien landed or crash landed, it would be, I'm sure you've heard this expression, but it'd be pumped full of lead. And I think people would still
shoot first, ask questions later.
Right.
That would be one reason for not landing on the White House lawn, wouldn't it? It's a no-fly zone.
So do you think that government secrecy is actually a good thing at some level?
Well, I think it's a mixed bag. I don't think there would be panic if you play the story right. If you put out reports that aliens have been killing people hither, thither, and yon, then of course they would panic. They would have a right to. What can we do against an advanced civilization? On the other hand, if you tell the facts the way they are, I think it would be a good excuse for sitting down with the other people on the planet. And I testified at the United Nations, actually, 2 different times, before the General Assembly. And I was quite pleased with the response there. I've only spoken in 19 countries, but that's more than most people. And I find that they're interested, excited, want to know more. and have their own stories to tell wherever I go. And that's, it's a crazy mix of countries that I've spoken in, from Argentina to South Korea to China to Australia to Israel to Finland, a whole bunch of places. People are interested everywhere. And so I think the fear of panic, I think you can fan that fear. You can. Dictators have often fanned the fears of their people, haven't they? Isn't it great to get them excited? Come with me and I will lead you against the enemy.
Yeah, that's the main story everybody loves. That's what everybody's glued to on the television anyways.
Yeah, and so, okay, we act strange ways on this planet, but I don't think there would be panic. And like I say, if we're spending $1 trillion this year on things military, my goodness, can't we figure out a better way of handling things than that? I mean, I've got, as I said, a great-grandson, had 4 kids that I was involved in raising, and surely we try to teach our kids that going for your gun is not the way we want to handle disputes on this planet.
Right.
At least that doesn't make a lot of sense when you got a big gun like an H-bomb around. Scares me.
Well, it scares me too. And I've lived around it my whole life. I can tell you that. I'm from the South, and people around here are very quick to shoot something. I mean, everybody knows that someone took a pop shot at my cat, but I want to talk a little bit more about that and the future of ufology. We're going to take our first break. Yeah, it really happened. Incredible dumb hillbilly did that. But we're going to take our first break, and then when we come back, a little bit more from Stanton Friedman. You guys don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.
The freedom to post what you want, when you want. That's the social media freedom you need. Social Media Freedom is the free app in your app store. No need to worry about going to jail or being shadow banned any longer. It's the freedom to say what you feel. The freedom to know Big Brother isn't watching. It's the way social media is supposed to be. Social Media Freedom. It's time to set yourself free. Download from your app store today.
The first annual Caribou Paracon is happening September 28th to 30th in the 108 Mile Ranch, British Columbia. Brought to you by the Canadian Society of Questers and Spaced Out Radio. Come listen to our featured speaker, Grant Cameron, along with Elizabeth Anglin, Paisley Town, Mike Moran, Eric Cooper, and more. It's a 3-day supernatural adventure at the Spruce Hills Resort and Spa. Tickets for the weekend are $150 Canadian. The Caribou Paracon, celebrating everything paranormal.
Find your escape where time has no limits. It's about living today and cherishing the heritage of yesterday. A spirit of adventure for what is new, with the nostalgia of the past. Your timepiece is a reflection of who you are. Life surrounded by beauty from the world around us to the soul within. EscapeWatches.com. There is no time like the present to enjoy your escape. Use promo code SMF2017 for your 20% discount today.
365 days a year, we're in the field, investigating UFO sightings, talking to alien abductees, and visiting secret military locations like Area 51. We're UFO Seekers, official partner of Spaced Out Radio. Follow our daily search for the truth at UFOseekers.com or like us on social media. Catch us on Spaced Out Radio every third Monday of the month as we discuss Area 51, UFOs, and more. And also, don't forget to subscribe to us on YouTube.
It's paranormal news at its finest. Welcome to The Encounter. At spaceoutradio.com, The Encounter online is SOR's trusted news source for everything weird and strange going on around the world. This is news editor Eric Markham. Our team of journalists are scouring the planet for those strange stories that rarely make the mainstream. No fear-mongering or fake news here. Head over to spaceoutradio.com and encounter The Encounter.
Want to learn more about aliens, cover-ups, conspiracies, cryptids, and the paranormal? All you have to do is tune in S4 as we take over the Spaced Out Radio night, starting at midnight Pacific, 3 a.m. Eastern, each and every Saturday night, right after Spaced Out Saturdays. Hi there, this is Eric Cooper from Forest Moon Paranormal. Join me, Corey Ruiz, and friends as we discuss the hot topics of the night. It's fun, entertaining, and as dark as the night. Find us at spacedoutradio.com.
Are you an experiencer? Have you had run-ins with strange creatures you can't explain? ETs, Dogman, Bigfoot, werewolves? They're enough to scare the daylights out of anyone. Hi there, I'm Butch Witkowski from your 4-Cop. And on the last Monday of every month, you can listen to me and the host, Dave Scott, talk about the weird and the strange being reported on Spaced Out Radio. I'm going to bring my investigations and sources, you bring your experiences, and we'll figure out the rest together. Strange Days on Spaced Out Radio. Come tune us in at spacedoutradio.com.
Do you want to know what's really going on in your world? Do you have questions about who you can trust in the mainstream media? Then look no further than the Rebel Planet. Come get the straight answers right here at spacedoutradio.com. Join me, Jamie Sexton, creator of Rebel Planet News, as I fill you in on the stories behind the stories. All you truth seekers, be sure to tune in to Rebel Planet on spacedoutradio.com the third Thursday of every month.
Heading to Vancouver and looking for some great nightlife? The Moose Vancouver is the place to be. Catch a game on one of the big screens or just come rock out to your favorite 80s and 90s hair bands. Great food starting at $6.95. The Moose Vancouver is open until 2 a.m. nightly. It's easy to find near the corner of Nelson and Granville. The Moose Vancouver is the official rocking bar of Spaced Out Radio.
Psychic Sundays, spiritual communication, ET contact, Sasquatch in your backyard. We will have it all on Cosmic Passport with me, Elizabeth Anglin. Each Sunday, starting at 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern, at spacedoutradio.com, I will take you on a journey of enlightenment. The goal is learning from the soul on out. We'd love it if you joined our experience, Cosmic Passport, heard Sundays at spacedoutradio.com.
Are you interested in advertising on Spaced Out Radio? Head to our website at spacedoutradio.com and click on our advertising tab. There, you will find an assortment of ways you can get your product out there with us, from radio commercials to banners and social media. Have a product you like our hosts to endorse? We can do that too. Visit spacedoutradio.com for more details.
Looking for nighttime adventure? Old school radio that delves into everything out of the norm? Then check us out at Spaced Out Radio. This is Dave Scott. Every Monday through Friday, starting at 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern, we're going to take you on a wild ride ranging from conspiracies to true crime and every ghost, alien, and Sasquatch story in between. We're always live and we're always interactive with you. So join us at spacedoutradio.com, where together we own the night.
The opinions expressed by tonight's guest do not represent the opinions or position of Spaced Out Radio, syndicated carriers, or anyone associated with SOR Media. Listener discretion is advised. This is Spaced Out Saturdays with host Joe Roop. You can follow Joe on Twitter at Lighting the Void. And if you want to call into tonight's show, dial 501-777-5631. Our website is spacedoutradio.com. Now, from the deep south of Arkansas, here is Spaced Out Saturday host Joe Roop.
Thank you, Bob. That's right, I am Joe Roop. This is Spaced Out Saturday. If you're just tuning in live with us on the Fringe FM, on any of our affiliates, don't forget that Spaced Out Radio is here for you 7 nights a week. And tonight after the show, if you're listening on spacedoutradio.com or the Fringe FM, check out S4 will be on after this program. We're here with Stanton Friedman, and we have been discussing his retirement, the future of ufology, and many subjects of that nature. One thing I wanted to talk to you about, Stanton, is a lot of people, when they hear that you're coming on a radio show or that you're going to do a talk, they say, you know, Stanton, he talks about the same subjects over and over and over again. And you know what? I think what people don't understand about that is the importance of the subjects that you talk about. I feel like, you know, the government cover-ups, Project Blue Book, Majestic 12, interstellar travel with nuclear propulsion systems, these are all real hard science and things that we need to focus on. And honestly, Stanton, I wish more people would talk about it more and over and over and over again, because I think it would actually get us somewhere in this field, you know?
Well, I hope so. Look, I talk about, I have several different subjects, titles for my lectures and stuff. A New View of the Cosmos, for example. My talk in Arkansas was Travel to the Stars, ? Yes, ! And I realized the slides I showed, most people have never seen pictures of a real nuclear rocket engine and a hypothetical nuclear airplane and little radioisotope thermoelectric generators. We sent a spacecraft to, a satellite, if you will, to Pluto, past Pluto. And the power for that 10-year journey was a radioisotope thermoelectric generator. Had a little plutonium-238 in it, which you don't make bombs out of. And that's quite remarkable, isn't it? How do you provide power to something which gets as far away from Earth as Pluto, as far away from the sun as Pluto? And, people have never heard about these things. So, and I don't mind showing a blacked out document or two and talking about these things. And I want people to think what kind of world they want us to live in, and to make sure that they understand that we're not alone. And I think those are important objectives. And so I certainly don't, I carry around 3 thumb drives because I've got about 10 different lectures on them. And, what are we talking about today kind of thing. And certainly the attendance at my lectures means people are interested in the subject. It's not me. If the people promoting the lecture promote my background and stuff so that people know I'm not some kind of a nut and, not a tin hat, whatever you call those people, there's a market there. People want to know more about this stuff.
That's true, definitely. I agree with you on that 100%. But what I don't want to see go away, and now that you're, announcing your retirement, and maybe it will go away, but the debates, I've spent a lot of time listening to the debates you've had, and I can go down the list. And I think that is some of the most important, content or experiences we need to have as two people debating about a subject that matters. I mean, storytelling is great. Talking about your experiences is really great. But there's nothing better to me than hard science and debating subjects like this.
Well, I was a high school debater, and one thing you learn, we won a state championship at Linden, New Jersey High School. I was way back. I graduated in 51, so I told you. But one thing about debating, you got to learn both sides of the story, because the next tournament you may be on the other side. So you can't put out baloney. You can't lie. It's an important discipline. And I was worried the first 6 months I was on the circuit, lecture circuit. If somebody can come up with stuff that I don't know anything about and make me look like an idiot, and it hasn't happened. Because I'd done my homework. I'd done the debater's job of digging out the facts, ma'am. Whoever used to say that. Just the facts, ma'am. Sergeant Friday, I guess.
I mean, just in case I ever get in a debate, because I can tell you that I do. And people don't think that. I love talking about the paranormal and ufology. Like I said, I love to hear, because I don't always assume everyone's lying. I assume I'm being told the truth most of the time, unless something's just really far out. But, maybe you can school us a little bit, or school me on the rules of debating. Are there just some standard rules that we need to pay attention to with that?
Well, I think there are. And one of the rules is you cannot lie. You cannot make up information. They're good speakers, and we have learned that politicians, among others, despots, have, how shall I put this, in public said things that weren't true. Look at Hitler. Mussolini was a great orator. He wasn't telling the truth most of the time, but, that's the way things are. So that's one of the rules. The other is behaving decently. You don't fling around insults and so forth. Name calling is not part of debating. Having to justify your conclusions on the basis of data is important. That's why I mentioned things like Blue Book Special Report 14. You're going to tell me most people don't believe in flying saucers, and almost all sightings can be explained. And I'll say, well, that's not what the study shows. Here's the table of the data. And, it's happened. I gave a talk to an alumni group from some large organization, and guy interrupted me. It was dinner and a talk. And why don't you talk about, and he shouted out, something or other. And I said, I'll be talking about that later. And the third time, the chairman said, let him finish. Okay, they let me finish. He let me finish. And I turned to this guy, this debunker, if you will. And right out of this is the first question in the question and answer period, says, well, I'm sure one could come to other conclusions than the ones that you have presented to us. And my response was, can you be a bit more specific, please, sir? Well, you said that Betty and Barney Hill were taken to Zeta Reticuli and back in 2 hours. No, sir. I said they were taken on board a craft for 2 hours. They didn't go anywhere. And there were two more questions like that, where he obviously didn't get his facts straight. And then somebody in the audience shouted out, how about taking some sensible questions? and I did. And with this guy, when I came to try to deal with him, I said, look, I've heard your questions. I gave you 5 sources of data. I've read them all. You have read none of them. Whose opinion is worth more? A long silence. I wasn't nasty about it. I just, because people who are presenting misinformation don't deserve to get a lot of public space for talking.
But they do, Stanton. That's the problem. And
I know.
They do at this moment. And
that's why I've been willing to debate them. When Dr. Michael Shermer and I debated on Coast to Coast Radio years ago, at least 10, maybe 12, should dig out the date for that.
That was a classic.
I got 80% of the vote. When Dr. Seth Shostak and I debated, I got 47%, he got 33%, and 10% said, I don't know who won. They took a vote. So, and this, it's great relief to people. And it's funny, after one of my lectures, a woman who was at the same table for dinner said to her husband, why did you raise your hand when he asked how many people had seen a flying saucer? And I do that, and typically it's 10% of the audience. But then when I ask how many of you reported what you saw, 90% of the hands go down. And he said, well, it was right after we were married, and I thought you'd laugh at me, so I didn't tell you. Isn't that typical? Fear of ridicule, apparently, and I'm a physicist, not a psychiatrist, fear of ridicule is a primary human concern. Nobody wants to look foolish in front of their contemporaries. And if they think most people don't believe in flying saucers, then they don't want to appear to be one of those oddballs, And it comes as a great shock to these people when I do my surveys, the results of them. They're surprised at how many people have seen one, and they're, shocked at how few of them reported it. And they're ready to believe. And, I say use the word believe. I don't like that word, but what other word can you use? Which side of the fence are you on kind of thing. And that's why I try to stress data, large-scale scientific studies, and evidence.
Right.
And, pilots,
exactly.
Police officers, people like that, people whose testimony you'd accept on anything else.
Well, I don't know about the police. Sometimes I've had some bad experiences with that. But, Bill Hauser, a.k.a. Can Dewey, asked a pretty good question. He said, what are your thoughts on helium-3? Is it possible that it would give Earth safe nuclear energy in a fusion reactor?
Well, I think fusion can be used to produce energy. Whether we're ready to do that or not, we've had some small efforts at that. And, do we need it yet? Probably not. If we're going to the stars, probably yes. And we do things for crazy reasons. We live on a planet which is loaded with oil, and look at the price of oil, look at the battles over oil and natural gas and so forth. I'd prefer nuclear myself. And I'm sure there will be new technology that we don't know anything about that will be used for fusion propulsion and probably something beyond that if we're going to go anywhere. But how can you keep the young generations down?
Yeah, well, and being able to change your mind is something that I think needs to, that's not a big principle. Just being able to change your mind about something. I'll give you an example. When To the Stars Academy came out, a lot of people thought it was going to be the worst thing ever. It's just going to be another flop. I actually had hope for it. I thought that something was going to happen. And I went on the air and said, maybe that we're going to get something out of this. But as time developed, then it just seemed to me like another thing that was just to influence us, to push the mob back and get us focused on something else that's not really based on facts, that all aliens are, they even changed the words, like they changed the UFO to something else. I don't even remember it because I was appalled when I read it.
Yeah.
It's What is your opinion on that? I know you kind of praised it in the beginning, right? I know I did.
Well, I was surprised because the New York Times carried a straight, large article without ha-ha on the side. That was shocking. And when I looked at the titles of Elizondo and others, and I'm anxious to watch kind of DVD of him giving a long presentation, and I'm anxious to see it. Look, I'm not saying it was handled the best way possible, but they were doing it, not me, and they had guts enough to come out. And that, I think, took a lot of courage. Think about that. You're standing up in front of the world because they knew they were going to get a lot of publicity. And one can argue about the details, and I certainly would have done some things differently. But I admire their courage in coming forth. And second-guessing is easy. Having the guts to do it in the first place isn't so easy. So I admire those guys for coming out.
So on the level, when this happens, you don't ever look at anything as a cover-up until you've done your research. Because a lot of us are quick to call everything a cover-up. But I think we need to back up and do some research first.
Have facts in hand before putting mouth in gear is my basic rule. And I wish more people would follow that.
Well, that's a very good rule.
Well, I have a very big gray basket, I call it, maybe. Give me some evidence and I'll listen to you. But don't just say somebody told you something and you're going to tell that's the way things are. Because I hate to say this, but we all know that there are liars in the world. We know that there are people who have promulgated false claims. The history of the United States, with regard to racial things and other things, there's been a lot of lies told. What can I say?
Absolutely. I do have just a question before I forget about it. Flying saucers, right? Is that just a concept? I mean, to me, it's just a concept, right? Because there's been cigar-shaped UFOs and...
Well, yeah, that came about, I mean, the first sighting to get a lot of attention, Kenneth Arnold's sighting, June 24th, 1947, less than 2 weeks before Roswell. Kenneth Arnold said they moved as a saucer would if you tossed it across the water. And he was a pilot, with a lot of experience, and he saw 9 objects. Can you imagine his shock? Because he timed them. There's a clock on the dashboard of his small plane as they went from in front of that mountain to in front of that mountain. And, if you know the distance and the time, then you know the speed. And son of a gun, these things were going well over 1,200 miles an hour. And his feeling, and you can understand it, this is in 47, must be a new government system. They kept the atom bomb secret. There are people who think secrets can't be kept. Well, there were thousands of people who worked on the Manhattan Project who didn't know that we were building a bomb. A few did, fortunately. The Lockheed developed stealth aircraft, costed billions of dollars in secret in a 10-year period. So secrets can be kept. And maybe it's a good idea that they can be kept. As I said earlier, you don't want, if you find out something about a craft that can avoid other craft, can fly incredibly fast and highly maneuverable and all this sort of stuff. Do you want to tell your enemies? You can't tell your friends without telling your enemies. That's the way our world is today. Thanks to people like you, people find out what's going on if it's made public. That doesn't mean you can't keep secrets. Like I say, I worked under security for 14 years, and people were telling me, oh, surely the wives of those people working on MJ-12 would have known what was going on. I say, absolutely not. I never told my wife anything classified. It'd be crazy to do that. I could lose my job on the one hand, and who knows who's out there. I can't control what she says out in public and happens to drop the wrong information, stuff like that. No, you have to keep your mouth shut. And that's a good thing. In general, I want the world, I want us to know what's going on. But there's certain things. Do you want to give people access to where the nuclear weapons are? And here's how you get in the gate, guys? I mean, come on.
Right. I'm with you on that. I think our security is, I'm a little bit more conservative about that too myself. But when it comes to flat out disinformation, I have a problem with that. I really do.
Well, I do too. I'm not for disinformation. But I think you got to be careful how you put out the truth, as a matter of fact.
Sure. And you're a character. I mean, someone you've worked near Area 51 on government programs that need to be classified, and you've had debates, and you've been on both sides of this equation, and that's what I like. Kind of like Elizondo as well. I think that. Well, I guess I can ask this question because I get this from Luis Elizondo, and I want to ask you: do you think that their conscience plays a role in this because they're behind, To the Stars Academy, and they quoted that, we want to tell people the truth, and I always had an issue with that. I'm like, well, do government agents really, do their conscience really bother them? Do they have to go out and talk about it? I mean...
It's a good question. I don't know. And one part of this, and we haven't mentioned at all, is the religious side. I have had people tell me, look, we have the only intelligent life in the universe. All of it is right here on planet Earth. God made them and nobody else. And, I don't get into that argument because you're talking about belief systems, not facts and data and so forth. I'm not going to say, because there's a God, you've got to do what I say, because there are a lot of other guys saying, well, my God says something different, or, that's a debate I don't want to get into. I'm a nuclear physicist. Let's get the facts and let's decide from that. And so I'm not saying, I don't think we've heard the end of the story on the To the Stars Academy. And I'm hoping that some of those guys will be talking more. I don't know if any of them have put out books yet, but probably will. Maybe. I don't know.
Well, it seems like they're, and in my opinion, it seems like there's some kind of what people are calling soft disclosure, where they're kind of letting just small cats out of the bag, just so they don't reveal everything. And it kind of, like I said, it pushes us back a little bit.
Well, soft disclosure, I hadn't heard that terminology, but that sounds like a good terminology to describe it. I'm not saying whether I approve or not, but remember, it's very hard to evaluate what other people are doing when you don't know all the facts of the situation. How bad is it? How many airplanes have we lost who have attacked UFOs and been shot down? And that may sound like a strange question, but Frank Ficino has done a book on the Flatwoods Monster in West Virginia. And in looking through things, we found that there were 200 cases. In 1 year, there were 200 fatal military aircraft plane crashes. 5 of those pilots had all kinds of experience, I guess is the way, many hours in the sky, so to speak, and in battle. And they come back to the United States, and they have a fatal plane crash. What's going on here? It scares the heck out of me.
Yeah, it doesn't make a lot of sense.
So what are we telling our pilots to... I was the first one to bring forth the Cuban Missile case. Their radar we have listening posts not too far from Cuba that listen to what their military communications, and somebody spots a UFO, and they scramble a couple of MiG-21s to go up, and what should we do? The pilots say, shoot them down. That's the standard things when you got planes violating your airspace. So the first pilot radios that he's got a radar lock on, his missiles are armed, and the second pilot shouts into the radio that the first plane just disintegrated. That's pretty darn scary. And the UFO takes off, and how do we react to something like that? That's not trivial. You wonder how many other times has that happened. I've talked to people who've told me they're at military bases where planes went up to chase UFOs and didn't come back. And so maybe there's a rule here.
Maybe that's what happened to Amelia, the Earhart, or the Bermuda Triangle stuff everybody keeps talking about. That's
who knows?
But you remember when I talked to...
She didn't have guns, did she? I don't think.
I don't know. That's a good question. I don't know if she did or not. But I remember talking to you on the phone earlier today, and I was trying to word a question about it, and actually Kevin in the chat room worded it the way I was trying to word it when I was on the phone with you. And he's asking, do you believe that some of the advanced research projects that are suddenly halted, especially ones in advanced stages and successful to a point, are really just being taken to a top secret basis with limited players now that the heavy lifting has been done?
Well, people keep asking me that. Did they cancel the programs? They ask about the programs I worked on. I have seen no evidence that they were moved into the black world. That doesn't mean it didn't happen. I'm saying I haven't seen any evidence that they have. I mean, what's the point of having a very advanced system if you can't threaten your enemies with it? I mean, you got to tell them something. I don't know, but I haven't seen any evidence that that's what's happened.
I'm just amazed at what I've learned from some of the cases, especially cases like yours and Blue Book, that I'm starting to think that the government is the I guess you could say the extent, the financial extent, the places they're willing to go just to do what they need to do to get their intelligence agenda done.
Well, that's impressive to me, too. And look, again, Phil, in my book, Top Secret Magic, there's a copy of the check from Philip Glass to me for $1,000 for proving him wrong. One of the Majestic 12 documents, he said, well, it's obviously a fraud. It's done in the large pica type, but the National Security Council, it says NSC at the top, used only elite type, and here are 9 documents to prove that. I challenge you to find any other documents done in the same size and style and type, he said to me rather publicly and in a letter and so forth. and I'll pay you $100 each up to a maximum of 10, and you have 60 days. Well, I went to my files. I found 20 pages done in the same pica type, didn't meet all his other criteria. And I was going to the Eisenhower Library, so I went there and found 14 that met all his criteria, and made copies, sent it to him, sent him an invoice for $1,000, and he paid me. And then got madder than heck that I included it in a document, a report that I wrote as well, in a book, and threatened to sue me, because I made him look stupid, I guess. And what can I say? I think I had the absolute right to expose him. And the funny thing is, I didn't know when I challenged him and sent him the invoice that he had never been to the Eisenhower Library. They have 250,000 pages of National Security Council material there. To think they were all done on the same typewriter, and if they only had one, for people listening, yes, people used to use typewriters before there were computers.
Yeah, it makes me wonder how fast the original documents get shredded, Yeah. I'm sure they did. Change this word up. Like I was telling you earlier today when I talked to you, I've been to blackvault.com, and I'd love to talk to the guy that runs that website.
John Greenwald.
Yeah. And
very good man. And
so much information there, but there is, like you say, there's so much classified stuff that's still blotted out or whited out,
Yeah, or blocked out, and I've got both. And there, even the they even wrote a memo. We have reason to believe that some or all of our agencies may receive a request from Stanton Friedman for more documents, and if such a request is received, do not respond as required by a certain document. Instead, send the thing to headquarters and we'll handle it. If there's nothing to cover up, why do they say something like that?
Well, they're using some kind of propulsion systems now out there. I know Tim Doyle has been out there plenty of times and has photographed video on YouTube of aircraft that you can't really make out what it is that doesn't make a sound, and it's moving at some incredible speed. So I know they're working on something that's different than what we're using now, for sure.
Progress comes from doing things differently in an unpredictable way. The big resistance is spending the money that it takes. It isn't easy to develop an entirely new system. That's why those programs cost so much money. It takes a lot of people, and I'll tell you, I was worried when we ran our first nuclear rocket test out in the nuclear test site. They had come to me less than 2 weeks earlier and said, Stan, we're not sure the heating rates in our control systems on the reactor. Can you get us some data quickly, please? We don't want to blow one of these things up. And so we had access to a reactor and got a lot of support. And I came up with a response that, yes, our measurements indicate that we're okay. But I'll tell you, I was realizing they played over the PA system in our classified facility, the live test, after 5 minutes, nominal temperature and pressure, and 10 minutes, and we didn't know how long the thing would last. You can only store so much liquid hydrogen. And I realized if this thing fails, they're going to blame me. So it was with great relief we went the full 60 minutes. That's how much liquid hydrogen we had. And I was greatly relieved because who knows what happens. Accidents do happen. We have had, quote, disasters, and I'd hate to be blamed for one. And sure, there weren't a lot of people around. They didn't set up... there were times the people in Las Vegas, the soldiers were lined up to watch the nuclear tests. Stupid thing to do, frankly. And I'm so glad that, people weren't around to be hurt if there was a problem. But governments do crazy things. But those tests were important because they demonstrated the principle that things would work. As I said, when you look at the nuclear navy, it shows that you can control something that is powerful and can cause damage if an accident happens. And people do make mistakes. And you don't, when you get a driver's license, you don't certify that you will never, ever be involved in a fatal accident. It happens.
Did you ever happen, did a mistake ever happen on your watch like that? Something that scared you as far as nuclear goes?
No, but you worry about it. And you're aware of the testing being done out in the middle of nowhere. And that's why. I mean, why do you run tests in New Mexico? Because there ain't many people around, buddy.
It's strange out there. And I've been out there as driving through Death Valley. There seems to be places out there that look like, abandoned towns and little villages that seem to be, it almost looks like they're just mock villages and towns. They're deserted. It's weird. Very strange.
They ran out of gold in the ground. I don't know.
Where'd everybody go? Right.
Well, yeah, look, I grew up in New Jersey, and I once won a bottle of wine on an airplane, honest to God. Prop times, they had to do something to occupy your time. There was a contest. Which state had the highest population density? And I happened to know that, so I won a bottle of wine. But look at the contrast. New Jersey today has like 8.5 million people in 8,000 square miles. New Mexico has 120,000 square miles and has less than 2 million people. That's an enormous difference in the population density. That's why White Sands Missile Range is in New Mexico. You can fire missiles without worrying about killing your own people. If something goes astray. One even went down to Mexico. There weren't very many happy people about that. Didn't kill anybody, fortunately. But so there's a big difference. And, people in Europe, I've had on a trip to Europe, someone said, why didn't you stop and see your uncle so-and-so living someplace? They had no idea that he lived 1,000 miles away. They have to worry about one time zone. Most of all of Western Europe is in the same time zone.
Where are you going to go? I mean, when you retire, are you going to you're going to stay right where you're at in that freezing cold place? I can't imagine you'd want to live out your retirement there. But that's just me. I can't stand the cold.
My wife is one of 9 kids, and one of the reasons we moved here. We sold our house in California and could buy one here for half as much. And there were aunts and uncles and cousins and grandparents. My wife's parents were alive here when we moved here years ago. So we'd like it here. Fredericton, New Brunswick. Come visit. The University of New Brunswick is here. It's on the beautiful St. John River.
Doesn't it get like 40 below?
We don't have a UFO museum yet, but what?
Doesn't it get like 40 below there? I mean, it gets...
only 3 times, I think, since we've been here. And I'll tell you what I was worried about growing up in New Jersey. Hot, humid summers.
Right.
Sweaty time. And we don't get it like that. And, it really gets above 90 and not too often above 80. Summers are great here. They're short. And I still have 2 feet of snow in my front yard. The roads are clear. They do a good job on that.
Well, I'm just the opposite. I love the hot weather, the warmer, nicer weather. Now, Stanton, as you go into your retirement, which is still kind of shocking to me, even though you're about to be, you're 84, you're about to be 84. I keep forgetting.
I'm about to be 84.
You're about to be 84. I can understand, but with that being said, who do you think right now, maybe 1 or 2 of people that we should really be following in this field that's kind of doing things the right way, in your opinion?
Well, John Greenwald is one. You've mentioned him with the Black Vault.
Right.
Good guy. And I've spoken at more MUFON conferences than anybody, Mutual UFO Network. And I did agree in next year, 2019, to speak at the MUFON conference in Irvine, California, the 50th one. And I spoke at the first one. I don't think anybody else is still alive who, spoke at the first one 50 years ago. So John is one. Look, my coworker, Kathleen Marden, co-author, Betty Hill's niece, she'll be around. She's a lot younger than I am. There are other good people, and people can join MUFON. And, I should give out my address, so I don't want to be a voice in the darkness that how you reach the guy. You can, or my email address anyway, or my website. How's that?
Sure.
www.stantonfriedman, that's FRIEDMAN.com. And it lists my books, and it gives the address of MUFON, Mutual UFO Network. The monthly publication has gotten much nicer looking. It's got color pictures and stuff like that, which we didn't used to have. And there are plenty of good papers. They have a symposium every year, and you have to provide a paper that's published in the symposium proceedings. So you can't just get by mouthing things that you believe. You got to provide some references and details and all that sort of stuff. And Kathleen Marden, as I say, is one. John Greenwald is one. He's a lot younger than I am, and I'm so pleased to see all the stuff that he's done. It tells you how to use freedom of information, I'll tell you that. And, Dr. Bruce Maccabee, he's as old as I am, but he's a physicist who's been involved. But go to the references. Go to my books loaded with references. And there is data out there. You don't need to depend on somebody on a late-night radio show.
Right,
You can
exactly.
go to the data.
Yeah, exactly. No, and I don't take offense to that, by the way, because everyone knows that I'm not the big time UFO researcher. I'm the curious cat. I'm incredibly curious about it. And one thing that I am curious about,
that's what you need to be,
that I did speak to Kathleen about, and I would like to talk to you about, is you've had your own experiences with UFOs, right? Am I correct in saying that?
No, I have never seen a
You've
flying
never
saucer.
seen one.
I have talked to people who have, of course, lots of them. And they're very relieved to get it off their chest. And when I sit at my vendor table at a program, like I was the other day in Arkansas, people have to tell me their sightings if they've had good ones. And they look around and make sure nobody's listening, and I'll ask, did you report it? No. Why not? They'd think I was some kind of a nut. So I've been working hard to lift the laughter curtain, that fear of ridicule. This is a subject that needs to be talked about. It affects everybody on the planet, that we're part of a galactic community, for want of a better phrase. And maybe we will act more peacefully when we start to think in those terms. I mean, obviously the aliens haven't come by and machine gunned us all. Bunch of idiots on this planet. Let's get rid of them,
No, a lot of people like to think that they very well could, though, if they wanted to. And I kind of wonder about that sometimes, because to me, that's an assumption, that the aliens are, I guess, nice people with supreme technology. I've seen a lot of dumb people use fantastic technology. I don't think all aliens have to be super intelligent.
No, they live at a place where, look at the technology we have at our beck and call. Compare that to 200 years ago, let's say. Wow. There have been an awful lot of people doing an awful lot of work to change how we do things so that we have better systems. Submarines during World War II could stay underwater for a day. You need oxygen for the diesels and so forth. Today they can go around the world underwater. That's an enormous jump. Look how fast airplanes go today. And look at the systems we've developed that we don't even use anymore. Some of the big airplanes, we don't have the SST flying, you noticed. It worked.
Well, I'm sorry that I didn't know that you had never seen a UFO. I thought that I'd spoke to Kathleen, and that she had said maybe it was her husband that she was talking about. That's probably what it was. But I could have swore she said that you and her had actually seen one together at one time, or maybe you thought you did.
Well, we did have a peculiar experience, light in the sky and so forth, and, when we were at a conference, and it did get reported, but I wouldn't call it a flying saucer. And the Mutual UFO Network group in the next state over, this was in New Hampshire, was able to identify it. And so we came close. We thought we might see one, out in the middle of nowhere, actually. And when the cameraman says, "What's that behind you?" you look. I mean,
right. Yeah, for sure.
A light up in the sky. But I wouldn't call it a UFO sighting. It was an interesting event. I was hoping.
Well, you never. I mean, what would it take for you to call something a UFO from a scientific point of view? Other than landing right in front of you and open up the ship door. And when I say, not UFO, I'm sorry. Let's say flying saucer, an alien craft that that's not piloted by something. What would you have to actually witness? Because we see lights all the time.
Well, it's a combination of things, appearance and behavior. It isn't enough to say it looks strange. I mean, we built the Avro car, which didn't go very fast, very far, or very high, but it was around saucer-shaped craft. It's perfectly obvious that there's an advantage to having a craft that doesn't have a front and a back, so that you don't have to go a long ways around to turn reverse direction. So it was a perfect thought from people, Avro and among others, to how do we design a system that will be able to go back and forth and up and down and so forth. And we haven't been successful, and I think it's because you need a magneto-aerodynamic systems, and none of ours were. If people think I'm talking science fiction, I did when I got this great job, I thought, at McDonnell-Douglas, which was, the program was canceled before I got there, one of the things I did do was a literature search on use of the word magneto-aerodynamics, because it turns out that you can control all the problems of high-speed flight if you create an electrically conducting plasma around a vehicle, ionize the air. And when a meteor comes in, it glows because the air is ionized. And it turns out you can do all kinds of good things. And I wish I could do them, but it takes a lot of money and so forth, and we haven't been very successful at doing that. But I think this is a new direction. There is two different outfits. One of them is Kawasaki in Japan, and the other was Dr. Stuart Way of Westinghouse Research Labs, have built electromagnetic submarines. You say, what's the connection, Stan? Come on, you're talking seawater. Well, it turns out seawater is an electrically conducting fluid, just like ionized air, plasma around a vehicle moving in the air. And there's an old law of physics, electric and magnetic fields at right angles to each other produce a force at right angles to both. You push against the seawater by Newton's laws, it pushes back. A reaction is an equal and opposite reaction. And away you go, sailing through the seawater. So I'd love to see somebody look at a magneto hydrodynamic or aerodynamic in the system, and maybe we are, I don't know. But it's not going to be easy. It's not going to be cheap. And remember, you're competing. If you want to build a fleet of these and, have United Airlines buy them, you're competing with existing systems. And the fact that we had a supersonic transport, which flew from Europe to the United States and so forth, landed at JFK, all the crossword puzzles tell you that. Well, isn't that a crazy place to see about?
Yeah,
I just did a puzzle today, but occasional lander at JFK, and the answer was SST, supersonic transport. I've never been on one, unfortunately, but I would love to see that happening. And I would, like I say, I thought I was having the ideal job, figuring out how these darn things worked.
Well,
let's face it, that would have been classified work.
Right, and when you say that, you mean, I'm sure there's things, I mean, I can tell there's already, that there's things you've worked on that you probably can't talk about, obviously, because you said you wouldn't talk about it to your wife. But, I get the sense from some people that people think that nuclear propulsion is kind of not only dangerous, but it's outdated. But, just like I asked you on the phone, I was thinking, I don't think it's outdated at all. And how are these spacecraft that we know that are here based on evidence getting here from whatever planet they're on? I mean, they have to have some kind of magnificent propulsion
let me
system.
throw a number at you. People wonder, they think it takes forever because you can't exceed the speed of light, and look how long it would take if these guys are 1,000 light years away, and there's no reason to say they're 1,000 light years away. As I mentioned earlier, there's 10,000 stars within 100 light years of here. But at 1g acceleration, the force of gravity, it takes less than a year to get to the speed of light. And there's a second part of the Einstein world. As you get close to the speed of light, time slows down for the things moving that fast. And sometimes people look at me, what are you talking about? Science fiction. Well, it isn't science fiction. That big accelerator over at CERN, the particles go 99.9999% of the speed of light. And time really slows down. You go out, come back, marry your granddaughter's best friend, Well, I mean,
I don't understand.
One of the implications of that. I'm sorry. That's the way the physics world operates.
Right, it does. But I don't understand, the physics of it all. I know, to me, it would seem like a human wouldn't be able to handle that, just to be on a ship. We can handle 1G, but does the acceleration?
We certainly do all the time.
Yeah, I mean, we're living 1G, right? But what I mean is if we enhance that and we kept accelerating, at what point do we get to where a human can't handle it in space?
Well, the acceleration. Remember, you got to follow certain rules. You can't have momentary 50G acceleration while you're at it.
Well, sure, yeah.
But so, there are rules. And like I say, I find people more amazed that an aircraft carrier can operate for 18 years without refueling. What? Because ship captains know you need a tanker around pretty close because you operate at high speed for a while and you're going to run out of gas, whatever you're using in your system. So it's a fascinating world out there. And I don't know anybody who's gotten close to the speed of light, as far as I know, but that sounded ridiculous how many years ago? I still find people writing papers like chemical rockets are the way to get to the stars. Forget it. That's why I mentioned the numbers on bombs, because people pay attention to bombs.
Right.
When you can get one stinking bomb that releases the energy of 50 million tons of TNT, and one stick of dynamite will make a mess out of your room, a good mess, then you realize that that's why the nuclear world, potentially dangerous? Of course. All new developments have been potentially dangerous. There was an airplane crash the other day that killed 250-some people. And this one was Southwest. We're just lucky. Only one person died in that. I'm told the people on board were praying.
Oh, yeah, they were doing more than praying. But yeah, it was a terrible, horrifying event. that happened.
Of course it was.
And it's natural, though.
Nobody's saying that we should stop flying airplanes because of that accident, though, are we?
I see your point. And I don't want this, and, you know, we only got a couple of minutes left here, so I want everybody to know that, well, you know, I've finally got to talk to you. It's been a real pleasure talking to you on the show. I've always wanted to talk to you one-on-one since I met you, but I think that, I don't know, even though I think it's time for you to retire, I'm sure it is. It's obvious. At some point you have to. It's sad, and a lot of sad things are happening.
Well,
right
yeah,
now.
you got to. Life goes on, though the dead be forgotten.
Well, your name, you're not going to be forgotten.
Why somebody said that.
Art Bell's never going to be forgotten, and you know, one day, you know, we all got to pass on, and I'd like to think that your research will go into the future as well, and I hope that it does. But when are you officially going to stop lecturing, though, or let's just say officially retire?
Well, I was planning to end it by the end of the year, but I have added one thing for next year. That's the MUFON conference in July of 2019 in Irvine, California, the 50th anniversary of MUFON. And I couldn't turn them down. I've spoken at more MUFON symposia than anybody. And it gives me a good excuse to write a paper, and that I know will be published in the proceedings.
Absolutely, it will be. I can't wait to see it. I want to thank you for coming on Spaced Out Saturday. I know it's an ungodly hour where you're at right now. You know.
Yes, it is.
What's it? Almost 3 a.m. right now where you're at? Is that right?
I don't think so. Yes, it is. Come
3
to think
a.m.
of it.
So
yeah.
It means a lot to me and the audience as well for you to come and to speak to us. And it's been an honor to be able to talk to you. I really mean that. Thanks for coming on the show.
It's been my pleasure, and maybe we'll do it again.
Absolutely. I would love that. Thank you so much,
Okay.
Stanton. I really appreciate it.
My pleasure. Good night.
Good night.
Good morning.
Good morning to you.
Good morning.
Right. Thank you so
Bye.
much. Bye-bye. Stanton Friedman, everybody. I can't believe that I actually got the opportunity to do that, but we're going to take our second break. We'll be right back. You guys don't go anywhere. We'll open up the phone lines. I hope some of you will call in and tell me about your opinions on his retirement, the stuff in the future of ufology, and whatever else we decide we want to do. It's going to be a pretty fun night tonight, I believe. We'll be right back.
The Call of the Wild is in Vancouver. The Moose Vancouver is one of the hottest bars and restaurants in the city. Open until 2 a.m. nightly, the Moose will rock you like a hurricane all night long. Great food with everything on the menu at $6.95 near the corner of Nelson and Granville. Get your horns up and come rock with us. The Moose Vancouver, the official rocking bar of Spaced Out Radio.
A timepiece is a reflection of who you are, and what better way to show off the real you than with an Escape watch? Escape is a lifestyle brand accessorizing your days and nights. Choose to escape and create the life of discovery that you deserve. Dream, play, unite with your own personalized Escape watch. Head to escapewatches.com. There is no time like the present to enjoy your escape. Use promo code SMF2017 for your 20% discount today.
Are you tired of being blocked, shadow banned, or placed in jail for simply posting your thoughts on social media? Social Media Freedom can take care of that for you. Social Media Freedom is the newest and one of the best free new apps that allows you the freedom to post what you want, when you want. It takes seconds to download from your app store. Come join the tribe at Social Media Freedom. It's time to set yourself free.
Coming September 28th to the 30th, it's our first annual Caribou Paracon, put on by Spaced Out Radio and the Canadian Society of Questers. 3 days of paranormal, supernatural, and spiritual knowledge in the beautiful 108 Mile Ranch, British Columbia. Tickets are $150 Canadian for the event, being held at the Spruce Hills Resort and Spa. Come watch our featured speaker, Grant Cameron, along with Lorian Fenton, David Weatherly, Ross Allison, and more. The Caribou Paracon, celebrating everything paranormal.
Not ready for bed on Saturday night? Right after Spaced Out Saturdays, hop on over to S4 with Corey Ruiz and me, Eric Cooper from Forest Moon Paranormal. With S4, there are no limits to what we try and uncover. From government conspiracies to helping clean up the paranormal, no topic is safe on S4. We get to the heart of the matter, of the subjects you want to learn more about. So tune in on S4 starting at midnight Pacific, 3 a.m. Eastern, only on spacedoutradio.com.
This is Eric Markham, news editor for the Spaced Out Radio's The Encounter Online. We have put together a great team of writers and journalists from all over the world to bring you top-quality paranormal stories. From alien encounters to the latest conspiracies, you won't find any of that fake news here. True stories and top-notch reporting as we look to bring these experiences to the mainstream. The Encounter Online, only at spacedoutradio.com.
Hi there, this is Dave Scott from Spaced Out Radio, and I want you to come on a nightly journey. Starting at 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern, every Monday through Friday, you can come hang out with me and the other space travelers. We have it all from Carl the Alien bouncing on by to those misfit gnomes causing havoc. It's 3 hours of fun and entertainment on those topics the mainstream really doesn't want to touch. Come get all paranormal with us at spacedoutradio.com, and together, my friends, along with our resident guitar god Bumblefoot, we own the night.
Do you want to know the truth? Do UFOs exist? Are aliens real? Are the governments hiding the biggest secret in history? We're UFO seekers, and we're on a hunt for the truth. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and follow along with us as we journey across the United States, visiting UFO hotspots and alien hotspots, trying to document the UFO phenomenon. Catch us on Spaced Out Radio every third Monday of the month as we discuss Area 51, UFOs, and more. And also, don't forget to subscribe to us on YouTube.
Looking for a place to advertise at a very reasonable cost? Look no further than Spaced Out Radio. SpacedOutRadio.com has an advertising tab that you can click to check out our daily, weekly, and monthly packages to play on the radio, or our website including social media. From commercial spots to banners, we have it all. Check out our competitive pricing today.
You hear footsteps in the empty room above you. A rocking chair begins rocking by itself. Don't be afraid of the things that go bump in the night. Reach for Spirit Storybox, the iPhone app the Huffington Post UK called the only ghost hunting app you will ever need. Spirit Storybox. The spirits are telling their stories. Are you listening?
Visit purpleplates.com today. For over 40 years, the Purple Energy Plates have been delivering amazing results for their many customers. Inspired by the great genius Nikola Tesla, the harmony, healing, and energetic effects of the plates have proven over and over to be beneficial and often miraculous to thousands of customers. Check their site for daily specials and choose from their many energy products. You won't be sorry. Visit them today at purpleplates.com.
It's Cosmic Sundays with me, Elizabeth Anglin, in Cosmic Passport. Let me take you down a 3-hour spiritual journey where we will get into everything from ET contact to Psychic Sundays. It's a journey of listening and learning together with some of the best professionals in their fields. You can tune in to Cosmic Passport at spacedoutradio.com every Sunday, starting at 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern.
The opinions expressed by tonight's guest do not represent the opinions or position of Spaced Out Radio, syndicated carriers, or anyone associated with SOR Media. Listener discretion is advised. Want more information about our programming? Check out spacedoutradio.com. You can follow our host, Joe Rube, on Twitter at Lighting the Void. Call in to tonight's show at 501-777-5631. Now, entering the radio ring from Arkansas, Spaced Out Saturday host, Joe Roop.
Welcome back to Spaced Out Saturday. I'm your host, Joe Roop. We are live on the Fringe FM and spacedoutradio.com. Also, don't forget, if you're listening you can download TuneIn app. It's free. So many free places to listen to this show. TalkStream Live, TuneIn, iTunes. Well, as far as live goes, I mean, Spaced Out Radio, the Fringe FM, TuneIn, those are where you want to find it, places where you want to find this show. We just got done talking to Stanton Friedman, talking about his retirement and, yeah, it's been a kind of a sad weekend for all. Big change has been happening in many ways. And I have Everett Threemer here with me. He's my partner in crime on the Fringe FM, also a part of the Spaced Out Radio team. Everett, thanks for coming to the program. I really appreciate it, man.
Hey, thanks for having me. That was an awesome interview with Stanton.
Man, I thought I was dying, to be honest with you. When I talk to, I love science, right? I love to talk about science. I think I've gotten so much grief for talking about evidence from audience members, listeners. I've gotten emails. People think that I'm calling certain people out. I mean, if I could read you some of the emails that I got, that like I've offended people simply because I'm one of those touch it, feel it kind of guys. I mean, for heaven's sakes, folks, I've talked about astral travel, and I know I've had that experience, but I've touched it and felt it and been there, you know? And I think that we need to integrate that with science. I don't throw people's stories out, you know, but I appreciate that because I really thought that I was dying in that conversation, to be honest with you, Everett.
Oh, I don't think so at all. And you know, the experiences of people are very important, and what they experience can't be discounted, but we have to kind of apply that same idea to science. I mean, we have to look at science and accept it as much as the experiences. And by accept it, I mean, accept that it's a part of what the paranormal community is, and look at it and evaluate it. And I think there needs to be, or there should be, a fair balance between the two. And whether you believe all the science or you discount all the science, it needs to be presented. And they both need to be presented side by side. If we throw out all of the research, then we can't validate the experiences. Exactly. And every now and then we just need to go in and explore some of that science once in a while.
Well, I want to see if Stanton was right about his statistics. And I want to entice anybody to call in at 501-777-5631 according to his statistics. And I believe that if I quote him right here, that, you know, I think it was 10% of people have actually seen UFOs, and less than that will report it. Now, I'd like to believe that at the Spaced Out Radio community, we have way more than 10% of people here that has actually seen UFOs. And so with this topic that we're talking about tonight, I would like you to make this a little interesting for us if you can. It doesn't matter. I want to hear your UFO stories. I want to hear your little voices. Honestly, I get tired of hearing my own. So if you call in, please call into 501-777-5631. Tell us about the latest UFO you saw or the greatest experience you've ever had. And see, I love the stories too. Just because someone tells me something doesn't mean that I don't believe them. But when you can back it up with science, I think that's great. When you can back it up with evidence, that's even more great. That's fantastic. And it's sad to hear that Stanton is going to retire. But, I mean, he's 84 years old, and he's in great health, wouldn't you think?
Yeah, and I hope I can be half as active as he is if I make it to 84.
Yeah,
I mean, he's
I don't think
he's
I'm
been
live
out
that
there
long.
on the circuit for over 50 years, I think. And I mean, he sounds great. He's still, you know, sounds like he's got some life in it. But you have to give him credit for that, and maybe let him go sit on the shore and enjoy one of those summer days that they have out there. Or maybe he's going to spend tomorrow shoveling that 2 feet of snow out of his driveway.
Yeah, he likes it in the cold, he said. But, hey, Vic Condor just joined the chat room. Everybody in the chat, we're all over in Spreaker chat. If you want to join the chat room, or at hashtag Spaced Out Radio. But, yeah, I'd like to hear people talk. I like, you know, on my other show that I do, Lighting the Void, I'm starting to do this deal where I have listeners come in on the first segment because I'm getting tired of reading the news, honestly, or looking at the news, and just tell me about their experiences they have. That's the one thing I love to do on the show is listener participation. And I don't just mean, you know, texting something or chatting something. I want to hear your voice. Like Vic. Vic's the man. Call in, Vic. Tell me about a UFO you saw. I want to see if our statistics are true as far as this community goes. But when I say big changes, I don't want you guys to think that I'm reiterating the death of Art Bell. It's just I feel something is shifting in this community right now. I've been feeling it for a while, you know?
Yeah, I think I've kind of felt it too. But, I think I disagree with those statistics. I think that a lot more than 10% have seen something, because even the people that I know that are outside of the paranormal community, I've had so many of them go, I saw this thing. And they're still a little bit at that stage where, like Stanton had said, they don't report it and they feel a little weird talking about it. But there are so many people out there that I think have had experiences that I just don't know that I buy that 10%. I think it's a lot higher. And I think that the more we talk about the experiences and hear other people's experiences, I think, and it's kind of cliche, but I think the more we do that, the more other people are going to come out and talk about their experiences.
Well, I totally agree with that. And, we're going to have a guest next Saturday on. I hope you guys join us next Saturday, who's had a classic paranormal experience. I don't know if you guys are familiar with Mike Vera, but he's going to come on the show and talk about that and what happened. I know he was on Paranormal Witness, I believe was the name of the show. So, but I am fascinated. I think above everything, ufology is my biggest subject here, because there is a science behind it. There is a lot of facts that we're not aware of, and I really want to get the guy from blackvault.com to come. Have you ever been to that website, Everett?
Oh, I've been there a lot. John Greenwald does a phenomenal job with what he does there. And there is, you could spend days and weeks just looking through the information that he has collected.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, and a lot of it's blotted out, but and that's what really pisses me off, because all the important stuff gets blotted out. The guy's name was, and then it's whited out, classified, and it was at this location, blotted out, classified. And you're saying, well, come on, man, you're just giving me like the bad parts of the sentence here, but you got to really do your research. And Stanton was one of those guys. I say was in past tense already, because I feel like he's done, but you can tell he's not real adamant about retiring. Like, he knows he should, but maybe he just don't want to.
Well, at his age, maybe even if he quote unquote retires, it just means a reduced schedule instead of, hitting the trail like he did. I mean, he's been everywhere, and he's been constantly promoting these ideas and talking about this and spreading the information. Even if he cut his schedule down 75%, that other 25% of appearances would still be a lot more than a lot of other people are doing.
Yeah, that's for sure. And I'm really hoping, I like this audience, Spaced Out Radio. I enjoy coming here. I don't know if I've been here quite a year yet. I know I've been here for quite some time, and I've learned more about ufology just being on the other side of this microphone, listening to you guys as stories, the call-ins you've had, the guests that have been on this show, the team. I'm really happy to be a part of Spaced Out Radio, and I'm glad that for once, I get to just rant. I get to go. I can, like right now, I've got several rants up my sleeve I want to talk about, but I'm kind of holding back on them. Do you think I should rant, Everett? I don't want to do that with you on here, though.
Oh, go ahead. I'd love to hear one. Maybe let's not spend the whole hour with you on a rant, but I'd love to hear one.
Well, my biggest rant is when people take offense to people's insecurities. Everybody's insecure about something. I can tell you right now, I am insecure about a lot of things, but when it comes to being on the level, I have to at least not be that way towards someone about these subjects. The proof thing really bothers me, and I don't want to keep bringing up Art Bell, but that was one thing that he did, talk about. He was on a few interviews. He'd come on a different shows, and he actually, I think it was only like 2 or 3 other different shows that he'd been on, and really told you what he believed and what he thought. And hard science was one of the things that mattered to him. And so I know that the Spaced Out Radio crowd likes to hear the most fabulous and fantastic stories, and I do too. But I hope that people don't take it personally when I say that I need proof. You know, when I don't need proof to believe you. I just need proof to know, if that makes any sense, you know. And I get upset when people get upset about that. It doesn't make sense to me. Why are you getting upset? Because I'm asking for proof, you know?
I understand that, and I think people get a little defensive or a little upset because maybe they are taking it as, you know, you're not believing them, you're not accepting their story. But I think there is a lot of, I guess, kind of subjective proof in the fact that there are so many stories and there are so many people out there who are telling these stories without any real motivation to profit off them. And I think there is something to kind of that collective body of experiences that when you look at it and you kind of analyze it, even if 90% of them are making it up, there's still something there. And I don't think that 90% are making it up. But what I'm saying is that in a way, the collective experiences are sort of a validation and not quite scientific proof. But until we have a craft or we have an alien or they land on the White House lawn, there is always going to be that section or that segment of the paranormal community and the community in general that is going to say, we don't have proof yet.
Exactly. 97 area code, you're on the air. Who are we speaking with?
Hey, Casper Parks. Can you hear me all right?
Hey, what's up, Casper? How are you?
Hey, I was doing some editing on my next book, and then I jumped in Twitter real quick to check on something I posted for views, and Dennis put up, Stanton Friedman's on Spaced Out Radio. I'm going, I got to stop editing, you know.
Right.
But I agree wholeheartedly with we need scientific proof, that we can hold up. And, but the difference, like for me, for example, is, you have a lot of people, I believe in UFOs, but when you see one up close, you go from believing to knowing, if that makes sense, but then it's not, because, I've had my own close encounters, but it's still, but I understand what you're saying, we need to go, but once you have something physical, you go from believing to knowing, if that makes any real good sense.
Exactly. That's my whole point. I want to know. And you're totally right about that, Casper. It's not, I don't ask for proof to disprove what you're saying. And I don't want to come across that way. I don't want people to think I'm demeaning what they're saying or anything like that. But to be able to know it is the ultimate thing to me. With the big questions, who am I? Why are we here? Are there life on other planets? Are we being visited by aliens? To believe is one thing, it's fantastic. But to know is a whole nother thing. And that's exactly why I ask for proof. So you hit that spot on.
Yeah, it's, you talked about soft disclosure. Quite a few years ago, the term was on a website, Post, coined the term disclosure light. And, at the time they were saying, that this is coming up, and we're going to do like a disclosure. It was like, they use the term, it's not coming from somewhere like some government agency, the term disclosure light as a slower, like you said earlier, soft rollout. We're seeing that a little bit more now. I mean, look at, was it a year or two ago, we confirmed that there actually is water on Mars. And the teenagers that were in the neighborhood, I kind of asked them about that, as some young adults, and they're all like, I thought we already knew that, and the disclosure seems to be kind of going the same way. It's like, there's that group, and they're getting to be younger now, where they just already accepted it. You follow me?
Casper, you bring up a really good point. And Joe, maybe this is something to put our tinfoil hats on for a second, but is this sort of, what's going on now? Is it designed not to disclose to the adults of today, the people who are 35, 45, 55, but is this sort of designed and geared towards the 25 and under crowd, because my son and his friends, they're very much into the paranormal. And there are things that I will go and talk to him about, like the water on Mars, some other things where it's questionable to me, but it's kind of old news to them. That they accept it and almost know more than we seem to know, or people my age seem to know. Is this maybe designed to sort of prep the next generation? And that's where the actual, for a better term, hard disclosure will come out.
Now, I want to comment on that, and whoever's calling, just keep calling. Once Casper hangs up, you'll get through. It's the one phone line thing. But I
can step out here a minute too.
Are you done with what you needed to say? Because I definitely don't want to hang up on you if you had more to say about the topic.
I had something to say about what he said. Go ahead. Go ahead, Joe. I got an email. It says, and I won't say who it's from, but it says, Joe, when it comes to knowing the truth and who to believe is telling the truth in the field of UFOs, that's left up to each of us. Just let own internal compass be your judge of what and who you believe, with one important caveat. What and who you believe will evolve over time. So before you call someone out, just remember that point before you do. A year ago, I would have had someone locked up that believed in Bigfoot as an alien, but now I have somehow come to believe that Bigfoot is real and he's probably an alien. I hope some of that helps you in some way. Well, see, right there, I don't really understand who I've called out, but maybe I come across wrong. I've had other people tell me that I come across like a smart aleck or something, but that's just me talking, and I've never tried to call anybody out on purpose. But what I mean is that I want to know. Anytime I've asked another guest that says, hey, do you believe this guy? Right? I want to know what they know or what they believe. But belief and knowing are two different things. I'm a much bigger fan of knowing. Oh, yeah, most definitely. I agree with you. And, as far as what he was saying earlier about, the age groups, when you look at the entertainment industry is a good example, or publishing or whatever, is you have what they refer to as demographics. Like, this demographic group is like teenagers. Then there's a sub-demographic group, which would be like teenage girls. So you're going to, push this artist on them or whatever. But you have demographic groups that you aim at. And and you look at the shows that are out now, whether it's the Orville, or Krypton saying some weird things right now, shows like that, and those are geared at demographics,
Right,
so,
I understand what you're saying.
And that's where, like, the X-Files is probably an older demographic, but if you look at, like, Krypton or the Orville, well, the Orville's more broad, so it's possible they're aiming at disclosure, soft disclosure light as a demographics, they're looking at how they're doing it. Maybe to look at that, I think it's a good idea what you suggested. But I'm going to step away so you can take a couple more callers. Thanks for taking my call.
Sure, I appreciate it. Thanks for calling, Casper.
All right, bye.
So, you see what I mean? I get those emails all the time. People, or if it's not an email, telegram or something of somebody that sends me, and I mean, they do it quick, as soon as they get offended. And I think that I guess I'm insecure that I'm offending people, because I definitely don't want to do that,
Well, what do you think the psychology is then of somebody who, how do you turn a belief into knowing? And I actually want a real answer to this, because I've had a couple discussions with some people who have told me that some of the experiences that I've had, and I don't typically talk about them, but to me, they haven't convinced me yet. But to other people, they look at me like, you experienced that and you're not a steadfast, true believer, and they don't understand that. And to be honest with you, I think I had talked to Dave Scott about this a week or so ago. I'm not even sure why I'm not a, true believer. I believe. I know there are things out there we don't understand. But I've had some experiences that should make me shout from the rooftops that ghosts exist and they're definitely real. But yet I'm still, I can see both sides of it.
Yeah, I can too. And I appreciate it. I appreciate you understanding it, because I do. I get a little worried about it sometimes. 212 area code, you're on the air. Who are we speaking with? Hello, 212. Well, that was weird. It just showed up and hung up. Try calling back if you can. Everett, are you still there, brother?
I'm still here.
I know your audio is a little rough right now, but I've adjusted it the best I can. Everett's like me. He's way deep out in the woods. 970 area code, you're on the air.
Hey, Joe. Hey, Everett.
Who are we speaking
with? Hey, all my
with?
space cases.
This Tess?
This is Tess.
Hey, how are you doing?
Hey.
Good. How are you?
Well, I'm trying my best here not to offend anybody, but I got to tell you, I want to say this publicly now that you're on the air. I really appreciate you helping out the show and helping me book guests and stuff. If you guys don't know, Tess has really been working hard, and everybody knows that when I do these shows, whether it's Lighting the Void or Spaced Out Radio, that I've had a few days where I don't even have a guest because I'm so bogged down with work, panicking, stressing everybody out, trying to get somebody on the show. And Tess came along and helped relieve some of that. So I really appreciate you being a part of the team.
Yeah, no worries. Thanks for spreading the information and knowledge to everyone. And these guests, I can't believe all of them are just filing in line, one after the other. At first, I was kind of afraid, nobody's answering, but every morning I wake up and there's a couple more. So it's been a great experience, and I've contacted some pretty awesome people.
Oh, yeah. I don't want to give some of them away, but yeah, we got some really cool people coming down the line for both shows. But do you have your own UFO experience, Tess? That I would like to think that you're a part of that small 10%. Or are you or are you not?
Yeah, I've had several UFO experiences, mostly alien orbs or, the light flying zigzag across the sky. But the most epic was last year when we were doing security for La Plata County Fair, and we had a crew of about 6 people, and one being Johnny Williams. He's a African-American Cherokee Vietnam vet. Was like, what the F is that? And I'm like, what are you talking about, Johnny? And thinking, somebody was infiltrating the perimeter or whatnot, and he points up to the sky, and he's like, what the F is that? And I looked up, and probably about, I want to say maybe 3,000 to 5,000 feet in the sky was what I could only call a mothership craft. It was quite large, and it was rotating. You could see the lights going around in a circle, and it would stay in the same space but move right, tilt right, tilt left, up and down. And then at one point it actually formed a U shape, which was really odd. And, I had never heard of that until recently. Other people have seen the same thing, so it just kind of backs that up that, we were actually seeing something, and it was there for quite a while. We were all in awe and just staring up at it, and all of a sudden I was like, you guys, we're staring up at this spacecraft, and we're supposed to be securing. Somebody's going to come up and rob the place. And just then there was 3 or 4 hoodlums that came out. But it was, a pretty epic experience. We were in awe and talking about it for months, afterwards. But
well, another part of the and correct me if I'm wrong here, Everett, but another part of that statistic that I'd like to know is, did you report the event?
No, I didn't. I've reported past events and never had contact back, so it kind of bewilders you and keeps you from reporting. And, I should have contacted MUFON or UFO Seekers or whoever, but like I said, I really didn't feel like I had any feedback before, so I don't know if it was really doing any good. So
you didn't report it because you weren't in fear of people thinking you were crazy, like Stanton was talking about, right?
No, and I do understand what he was saying about, feeling ridicule. I was in the paranormal closet for years until about 2012. Dylan Redwine went missing. his dad had killed him and dumped his body up on Middle Mountain. And so I came out and tried to help find answers, and we did find several things. But, yeah, you do fear that ridicule. I grew up with it all my life, and I'd only share things with people that I felt close to, that I felt like I can trust them, and they weren't going to judge me because they knew me so well. But you just don't run around telling that to everyone, you know. But I've had a couple people look at me like I was crazy, but I know I'm not.
Right.
Like I said, there was like 6 of us looking at the same thing, and I tried to film it on my video recorder, but it just wouldn't pick it up. It was too far away and too dark, and it was actually around a full moon, so that was interfering with picking up, you know, that distant light as well.
Well, I'm going to have to get a multi-line system here. I got 2 or 3 people calling in. I'm going to have to open up that thing again. Eesh.
Hey, Tessa, can I ask you a question?
Certainly.
You said you tried to report it, but you didn't get any feedback. Did you report it to like MUFON or the National UFO Reporting Center or a paranormal group? Who did you try and report it to?
The first group that I had reported and actually sent pictures to, because I do have some really good UFO pictures, information. But yeah, it was UFO Seekers, which was recommended to me by Dave. But yeah, and then MUFON, you know, I haven't reported to them yet, which I should, and I have the dates and everything, so I can still report them. But yeah, UFO Seekers, I just haven't heard anything back from them.
Well, I appreciate you telling
unusual.
us about that. That is unusual.
Usually Tim's right
Dave
on
was
top
saying,
of that.
yeah, it was a pretty busy time or whatever. They had a bunch coming in, so maybe it just fell through the cracks or something. But
well,
yeah, I will never forget that experience. It was pretty epic, and you know, my dad used to tell me all the time when I was a kid, and I wasn't sure if it was real, but I've had experiences with my daughters mostly, and then with my security team on the last one. So it's cool I wasn't alone in any of these cases, but you know.
Well, I appreciate you calling in and letting us know.
it.
I thought for a minute no one had a UFO experience, and no one was going to call in. But yeah, so didn't do it because you were you thought people would think you were crazy. So there you go. Thanks for your call.
All
I
right, well, you
appreciate
guys
it.
have a good night.
You too. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Tessa.
Right, bye-bye.
Tess, my favorite, one of my favorite people. Why is Tess one of my favorite people? Because she makes my life easier. Thank God. Right? And she does really good work. Some of the guests she's gotten is incredible.
You have to appreciate people who make life easier.
Yeah, and not to mention, I don't know, she might have been one of the last people on the face of the earth who even got to email Art Bell, because we did receive an email back for him the day before he passed away. 330 area code, you're on the air. Who are we speaking with?
Hey, Joe, this is Moonlight. How you doing tonight?
Hey, man, it's good to hear from you.
Yeah, man, by the way, you did a great job with Stanton.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
It's not only me. You knocked him out in the room, and also when he doesn't enjoy himself, you can tell he'll step up the sarcasm and stuff, and he really enjoyed himself with you. So, anyways, I just.
You know, that question you asked, I talked to him earlier today on the phone. I called about noon because I was so afraid he was going to be asleep when I called, and I was trying to word that question because he told me about all those projects that got shut down, and I was thinking, okay, they would spend all this money on these projects, and they would be successful, and they would shut them down. So that's what I thought, exactly what you said, but I just didn't know how to ask it. Would the government be moving it on to something else? And another question I was trying to ask him is, if you knew about that, would you even tell us? You know, because he admitted there was things that, you know, he couldn't talk about, that he'd worked on classified stuff, you know.
Yeah, and for stuff like that, you know, I've had a friend, he wrote crypto for the military, and he used to get exposed to a lot of the projects that have been hidden for years and years, and for even like something as like the stealth project, you know, the A-1 bomber and everything else. He was shown that 10 years before it came out, and we just kept kept it on the sideline and kept it on the sideline until it was just no use to keep it hidden anymore. We had stuff way better than that, and there was no use for them to keep it on the books anymore, and we can just bring it out because we had other stuff that when we needed to, we'll bring it out, and so that's just the way to do stuff, and that's how we get the. I'm sure, in my opinion, that's how we got the our space fleet out. We put stuff away, and.
Are you a member of the military by any chance?
Not directly. I worked research doing stuff for Bell Northern and other telecommunications, and a lot of our stuff goes into military programs and stuff like that over the years. I'm retired now, but so a lot of our programs and stuff like that ended up becoming militarized, and so I know that's the way a lot of our things went. And we got a lot of military people that came back. When they came back from serving, they would come into our company, and we took care of them, and depending on what they did, if they were somebody that was working in something juicy and stuff like that, we would get them and move them up in the ranks where they could be useful and use their influence in Washington and stuff like that, and something that we could utilize, and back and forth. And anyways,
well, I want to do a statistic check. I know you probably some of that stuff. I don't know how much you can talk about or you can't, but I got to check Stanton's facts here. Have you ever seen a UFO? And if you did you report it?
I saw a UFO, and yes, I reported it. I was only like 11 years old at the time. I reported to my parents. I reported to the police. The next day, it came out in the paper, and the fire chief reported seeing it. A dozen steel workers reported seeing it on their lunch break. Also, a dozen people at a ceramics plant saw it out on their break. It was middle of summer, and these guys were out on their lunch break in the evening. They had to get out of the plants. They're hot as crap in these kind of plants. And they were all outside sitting on their picnic benches, and there nothing to do but to look up and play around outside, and they all saw it in the sky, same as I did. They all reported it. It's still in the newspaper here in my hometown, and so it all came out the same night. I remember the night also because one of my neighbors had gotten burglarized, and so that's whenever we saw the police also that night. It was a big night for me. I was 11 years old, and all that activity happening in one night. I was camping out in the backyard.
And you'll never forget it.
I will never forget it. And ever since that, I've been searching into UFOs and everything. So I'm 55 now. So
55,
it's been 40-some years. Yeah. So you were born like my first year in college. So so I was just looking back at some of the years and stuff, and it's amazing how many years you start looking into some of the stuff. And when you guys are talking about the generations and stuff like that, for people my age, if folks don't believe it by now, they're a lost cause. We've had so many things in our lifetime that have come out and trickled out. The people that are older than me, if they don't believe it, they'll never believe it. I talked to one of my neighbors who's 70 years old, and he's been a hunter all his life and this and that. He doesn't believe in Bigfoot. He doesn't believe in any of this stuff. They'll never believe it no matter what. The people younger than us, your generation, where you're stepping through, you're just getting into the part where you're seriously getting into it, and you're starting to understand be able to differentiate, what's true and not true.
Yeah.
Then you look at the kids going into college now and stuff like that, and they're getting to be able to differentiate between facts that they see on TV and what's not facts. They're just becoming of age now.
Well, I got to tell you, being 36 in this community, it wasn't too long ago I looked around and noticed not only was I one of the youngest hosts that were talking about this thing as far as live radio goes, but that I was young comparatively all the way around. And so I guess you could understand some of my insecurities talking to a man like Stanton Friedman. And, I've talked to Whitley Strieber, and I feel like that I'm so lost, like I'm over my head. But apparently all of the same questions that I have are the same questions that other people have. And I'd like to think that I'm representing those people in my age group. And I hope they'll take this ride with me. And I appreciate you calling in.
Oh yeah, and he loved talking to you. You could tell in the tone of his voice and everything. And thank you, just thank you for having him on tonight and everything, and the way you treated him and everything. And I hope you guys have a great evening. Thanks,
I appreciate it, Kevin. Bye now.
Have a good one, Joe.
I don't know that I've ever heard his voice before. It's good to hear the man's voice.
Yeah, excuse me. He brought up a couple of good points, and I want to run this by you. He talked about these sightings where multiple people saw them. At what point does the video evidence from some lone person who catches something kind of fall to the wayside, and the mass sighting, the experience of somebody in one area of town and somebody in another area of town, or another town, all these people are seeing these things, and all of these people are able to videotape them or take pictures and communicate on social media. At what point does that sort of collective experience become more valid and more important than just a random video or
it
random
definitely
picture?
does. It's got to. I mean, if you take the Travis Walton case, for example, I don't care what Philip Glass says or who says what. There's a reason why that was one of the best cases that ever existed, was because not only did so many people witness what happened, they all had the same story, and they all took lie detector tests to boot. For people that have heard this a million times over, but those things are the most important things. Some of the people in the field today that are all over the web would never take a lie detector test. And I'm thinking, why not? Why don't you want people to know? Don't you want them to know? And if you really do want them to know, then you should do that. 212 area code, you're on the air.
Oh, it worked. Hi, Joe. And is Stanton still there?
No, Stanton, we couldn't keep him till 4 a.m. I mean, I didn't even want to ask him, to be honest with you. I could have, but I didn't want to.
Oh, you got a great guest. You give great guests. You know that?
I appreciate that.
Anyway, I don't know if this is a not relevant question, but I just had to bring it up because it just happened to me. I was giving blood for, not for donation, but for testing. And I had a rather large amount of blood to give, and during my blood test, 3 times during my blood test, there was a vibration as if it was a cell phone coming out of my arm into the blood tube, into the needle, and into the, vial of blood. And the phlebotomist also sensed that vibration. It was like as if my arm was like a cell phone. That buzz, that vibration of a cell phone.
Wait a minute. So you had a vibrating blood. Your blood was vibrating.
I don't know, what was up with that? And I said, did you ever experience that with a patient? She goes, no. I said, I've never had that happen to me either, except I used to actually feel vibrations, and I assumed they were my cell phone. And it took me like 10 times to realize my cell phone was nowhere near me when I felt that vibration. And it went away, it just went away, and I ignored it. I'm like, whatever, And the other thing that happened to me was I was just in an elevator. I was not touching anything. And all of a sudden, have you ever had electrocuted yourself accidentally, like you were the grounding force between 2 appliances in your house, like the refrigerator and the stove?
Many a caffeinated night. Of course I have. Tinkering with stuff that I shouldn't be tinkering with. It's a horrible feeling, you're stuck. You're practically stuck to the appliances until something, I don't know how, you get released, But suddenly I felt that sensation of that electrocution, just in my thumb. And it was like I wasn't touching anything. I'm like, what the hell is going on? And it was exactly that feeling, like I was touching 2 pieces. So I'm just wondering, is all these chemtrails that are falling down, are we starting to become electric? Do we have that much metal in us that we're starting to have vibrations and frequencies that are not natural? Or is this the transhumanism
effect? Is this what do you call it? A symptom of whatever agenda is going on to do something to screw us or something, or to use us or to enslave us?
Well, I've got to admit that I have never, ever heard a story like this before, that your blood was vibrating. Did you feel the vibration like in your whole body or just where the needle was inserted?
It was in my veins. I felt it coming out of my vein, like just because it was so local. And I looked at her, she looked at me. I mean, it was definitely happening. It was so not my imagination, and she felt it too. She's like, "Wow, that was weird." Huh. We both knew our cell phones were not the cause of it, so it was definitely validated that it was coming from me. And I just wanted to find out if this has happened to anybody else and why, or if anyone knows about this. And maybe this is a question I can ask Linda Mufton-Howe, because I'm going to actually go see her. I got a ticket to see her live. Can you believe it? Well, and if anyone has a really great question, can you give it to me? Can you think of a really great question for her? I want to have like an excellent question. I don't know if that's an excellent one.
Well, here's a question for you. So are you wondering about, and if I can get this right, and Everett, you can chime in at any time. Are you thinking that maybe because they're spraying the skies with the metal particles that they're trying to get this in our bodies so that they can program us? Am I understanding you correctly?
I definitely am on that wavelength. Among other things that they're doing as far as putting carrageenan in our food, which is something that makes fiber optics, and you can't digest it, and there is absolutely no reason for us to eat carrageenan or sodium alginate, except it's somewhat of an emollient, and it's something that maybe stretches your food out longer. It'll make milk bigger, let's say. Emulsifier, they call it, right? Well, but it's something that they would certainly not put in food in other countries, and they're putting it in anything, like randomly. They're putting it in milk, cottage cheese, cereal, candy. If your candy starts tasting artificial, just take a look at the ingredients. If you see carrageenan, spit it out. You'll never digest it. It's not digestible. It'll stay in your body. I know this. I mean, this is really messed up.
That's some scary stuff.
This is deliberate.
I appreciate
I feel it's very deliberate.
Well, I appreciate you calling in and letting us know. If anybody's had an experience like that, please let us know. We only got a few minutes left on the program. Daryl, I'm pretty sure that's who that was. Thank you for your call. What in the world? Have you ever heard anything like that, Daryl? I mean, Daryl Everett?
Well, she mentioned the phantom cell phone ring phenomena, which that was about 5 years ago. Pretty darn popular. It seemed to be happening quite a bit, and it seems to have completely disappeared. I don't hear the reports or the complaints of that anymore. And I kind of wonder if, that was something somehow programmed or controlled by technology. Was it intentional, and were people actually experiencing something and they've stopped that program? Because I experienced it many times.
Well, I think that the data does back up that, that by now that they're spraying the skies. But as far as programming us and, deliberately getting this stuff in our blood, I'd really like to think they're not doing that, But again, here we go. This is one of those things where, as crazy as it sounds, I'd like to know about that. See what I mean? Wouldn't you like to know instead of just believe it?
I would. I really would. And with the carrageenan, that food additive is used for a lot of different things. It can be used to bind different ingredients. You know how when you have a salad dressing and you leave it in the fridge for any length of time and it kind of separates? Well, a lot of foods will do that, especially a lot of prepared foods or processed foods. And that's put in there to kind of keep it from separating, because some people would find it unattractive or a little bit repulsive maybe if they opened up their sour cream and the whey was on the bottom and there's a bunch of water floating on the top, and that's put in there to kind of prevent that from happening. And it's put in other things. It adds texture. In a way, she's right. And it allows them to sort of pass off a cheaper product as something a little bit better.
Gotcha. 423 area code. You're on the air. Who are we speaking with?
Hey, Joe, this is Tommy. Good evening, guys.
Hi, Tommy. How are you?
Yeah, just fine. Enjoyed Mr. Stanton there this evening. He's pretty cool. Always enjoy him.
Did you agree with his statistic about, well, let me ask you this. Have you seen a UFO? And if you did you report it?
Well, I've got about 20 or 30 on video, but I didn't report them.
Why? Why didn't you report them?
I didn't even think about it, really. At the time, it's about 15 years ago.
Did you not think that it was important for people to know about it at the time, or did you think that people would think you were crazy, or you just didn't think about it?
Well, it was only important to me, really, that I satisfied my, curiosity.
Okay. Well, I appreciate.
I didn't actually think of it at the time. I just more or less wanted to prove it to myself. So there's gazillions of videos, and you've seen all those and stories. They're kind of a distraction, really. I heard, for example, I wanted to comment on what that previous caller, that gal, was saying. Forget her name, about the carrageenan. Now, I was been learning about that, and they have it in all the pet food. And I stopped feeding my cats the pet food out of the grocery store and ordering grain-free, carrageenan-free food, and there's a remarkable difference in their vitality. And I've been gluten-free myself for about a year and a half, and my point was that it's an attack on the blood. It's your life force. It's your gold. You are the wealth, and they have to attack the blood so they can because it pumps your life force, your essence, your heart.
Who's attacking us?
The Anunnaki, the Cabal, their minions, these off-planet invaders, occupiers. It's an attack on your life force, so that anybody wakes up to discover they don't need them anymore, because everybody keeps focusing their attention on all this negativity, and they can't get themselves out of the wet paper bag they find themselves in, because it's a negative, very negative realm. And they say if they come here in metal craft, they're from the other side of the tracks, and you don't want to talk to them. They don't have memory to share. But if they come here through the sun, they have memory to share. So it's a realm we're trying to move out of into another dimension at this time, as Michio Kaku talks about type 0 civilization to a 1, and so it's cool because it's a slow move, a systematic move, gradual wake up for everybody, because we know, but the majority of the people, all the things, you can't have disclosure just of the ET or UFO phenomenon, because that opens the door to all the other truth-telling, or the lies, the truth about all the lies that the government and everything would open the door to all of these questions. They just don't have time to answer. So there is an extra existential force. It's a spiritual, esoteric agenda that is managing, let's say, our good guys to overcome the parasitic element so that we, the people, nobody going to save anybody, so that we, the people, can have the fair opportunity to use our own free will to do that which we will in the garden and make it a garden planet.
I got like 30 seconds here, and I got to let you go.
Okay, yeah, that was all. I forgot what I was saying before that. I kind of got off track, but there were so many things I should have called earlier. But, yeah, good stuff, Joe, and you're doing a good job, and good interview with him, and I'll check you another time, let you close out the show.
All right, thank you for the call. I appreciate it, Tommy. Everett, see, that's what I'm talking about. That could be true. Fascinating tale, right? It very could be true if it is God. Would you want to know that?
It could be true, but I wish you would have taken that call first because I have some questions.
Oh, yeah, I got plenty of questions.
More than 30 seconds.
Yeah, I got plenty of questions. But, maybe Tommy knows something that we don't or something that I don't. And if he's right, then I want to know about it. Come on.
Well, see, I have a problem with when people talk about off-worlders wanting to enslave us. I'm trying to figure out how they're enslaving me. The government and their taxes enslaves me. My job enslaves me. There are no aliens that are really having any effect on the things that I do to make me a slave.
You're aware of, though. What if you're just not aware of it?
But if they wanted to enslave me, why don't they abduct me and have me shoveling coal into the boilers on their UFO? I mean, if they're going to enslave us, make us slaves.
Huh. Well, it is written in some books, and I'm sure some people have talked about it. I've heard some experiences about it, but it's one of those things where, as far as the science goes, besides the chemtrail part, because there's science behind that, we don't have, unless I'm wrong about this, but we don't have scientific proof that aliens are enslaving us. Am I wrong about that? Do we? If we do, I'd like to know. I wish somebody would call or email or something. Please let me know about that.
Yeah, I don't think there's any scientific proof of that yet. I'd love to see some.
Well, the thing about it is a lot of the times, and this is my whole point, that last caller is why people get upset with me, because I try to dig proof out of that. And I think proof is kind of a cuss word in this field. I get it. But it's one of those deals where the more people I talk to, the more the story kind of lines up. And I guess the guy that emailed me is making a point. If I hear the same story from a few people, then I'm going to have to decide whether I believe it's true or not. But I really am glad that you got to come on the show, Everett, and talk to me, because I wish you would have come on earlier and talked to Stanton with me, but you didn't really want to. But I'm glad. I hope it went well. I hope everybody enjoyed the show tonight. And next weekend, we're going to talk to Mike Vera about his paranormal experience with his son in that haunted house and discuss that. So I'm pretty sure you guys are going to want to hang around for that. Everett, I appreciate you coming on, man. It's been a blast. I've had fun tonight.
Hey, thanks for having me. And that was a fantastic interview.
Oh, yeah, anytime. You're welcome on the show anytime. No. But, yeah, you're welcome to come on anytime. Thank you for all the calls that have called, all you guys that have called in. I promise I'll do my best to get Stanton back. He even said that he'd like to come back on the show, and that to me is a real treat. So I guess we're going to sign off. Don't forget, after the show is over, S4 is going to be on the Fringe FM and Spaced Out Radio. You guys want to stick around for more live broadcasting? That show's worth sticking around for, I promise you. Until we see you next Saturday, good night, everybody. Take care.
And the broken saints are walking in their sleep since yesterday. They stopped counting by the last mile. No one asking to be saved. sun blowing. I let it lead me astray, looking for a path to follow in the darkest of our days.